The night calm over one of the strongest hidden villages of the shinobi world was disturbed by a loud explosion, and the sound of a part of the protective wall of the village falling, after which thousands of people in white masks rushed into the breach. Battles were going on everywhere, the names of techniques, the screams of the dying and knocking were heard. Then on the wounded, the fighters of the village fought to the death, taking several opponents with them to the next world. But the forces were clearly not equal. "Naruto, you need to leave," Minato shouted now, when the village hidden in the whirlpool was attacked by unknown ninjas in white masks. "We can't handle it." "I'm not leaving without you," said a boy of 8 years old, beating off enemy shurikens. "Go away." A red-haired girl of 25 years old shouted with steel in her voice, throwing another kunai at an opponent who happened to be nearby. "We will detain them. As soon as you reach the shore, throw the kunai, and we will move to you." "But," the boy tried to object. "Quickly, Naruto." The man barked at his son, forcing him to obey and rush up the protective wall of the village, after which he disappeared behind it. At the same time, 3 7-year-old girls ran out from behind a neighboring house to the 2 remaining ninjas. They were scared and didn't know what to do. Minato remembered them well. They were orphans. Their parents died on the battlefields in the last war, leaving them alone. But the girls held on. "The 3 of us always kept together. Hey, come here quickly." I called them to the Mikaze. "Minato-san, help." A girl with glasses, who was very scared, shouted. "Where are your caregivers?" Naruto's mother asked the question. "They told us to run, and they themselves began to fight with these masked shinobi," rammed long-haired Uzumaki, the calmest girls. Breathing heavily. Clearly, Minato held out, then folded a series of seals and summoned the red toad. "Get into her mouth, she will move you outside the village." "But what about you?" the third girl screamed, shuddering from another strong explosion. "We're going to follow you now," Namikaze smiled reassuringly. The children, obeying, went into the open mouth of the frog, and she, slamming her mouth, jumped over the wall, right into the cold water of the sea that surrounded the island on which the village was located. A blonde-haired boy was running through the water at high speed. There was only nothing left to the shore. There were almost no explosions behind them. Suddenly, feeling the familiar chakra, the blonde looked down and saw a red frog that was overtaking him, swimming underwater. Jumping to the shore, Uzumaki saw 3 red-haired girls coming out of the frog's mouth. Instantly realizing, he threw a kun from the seal of the thunder god into the nearest tree and began to observe the island, over which various techniques and flashes of explosions were constantly visible. Part of the wall surrounding the village has fallen. The girls also joined his observation, flinching from each explosion that reached the shore. Suddenly, shinobi began jumping out of the trees above the children's heads, right on the water. They didn't even look at the children as they headed towards the village on the island. Naruto noticed Konoha's protectors out of the corner of his eye. Allies flashed through his mind. There was a terrible explosion on the island, and after it another series of large and no less terrible explosions. A second later, a large crater formed in place of the village, which smoked, hiding behind a view of the destroyed settlement. "How so?" the stunned blonde man muttered. All the newly arrived ninjas stopped, looking at all this, not knowing what to do. Uzumaki looked at the kunai, which was also hanging alone, with its tip stuck into the tree. They didn't have time, the boy's thought flashed. In confirmation, there was a pop from behind, the frog was gone. The blonde man instantly folded the seals and summoned the old toad. "Scroll the contract quickly," the blonde man shouted at him. Everyone nearby looked at him. The toad nodded and, folding the seals, summoned a scroll. The boy snatched out a huge scroll and jerked it open. The blonde man quickly found what he was looking for and froze. "The name is crossed out." Naruto fell to his knees, dropping the scroll to the ground. The old toad just shook his head, looking at the boy with pity. "Naruto, where is Minato?" an old man with a big black pole asked. Naruto knew this man when he walked with his father at the end. He personally met Hiruzen Sarutobi, the acting hokage of the village, hidden in the foliage. Naruto didn't answer, and the old man looked at the scroll. "Jiraiya?" Hint Ziminate. Naruto Uzumaki. Crossed out, the third one said to himself, I remember that if the name is crossed out, then the contract is broken. Or its owner is dead. Go check, maybe someone survived. The girls looked at their former village in shock. Janina and Anbu ran across the water to the wreckage of a previously great and strong village. Dog Cat Rat called the old man, and instantly 3 Anbu appeared near him. Escort them to our village. The old toad disappeared with the scroll. Naruto, having risen, trudged after Anbu on the machine, despite where and why he was being led. Right now, all his thoughts were about one thing, and he was completely immersed in himself, trying to figure out how this could have happened. Come on, we'll take care of you, the girl in the rat mask gently called the red-haired girls. Those, not moving away from the shock, also trailed after her. They went to their new village. The village, hidden in the whirlpool, ceased to exist, Hokage sadly stated, a fait accompli. As soon as all the clan heads and elders gathered in the briefing room. 4 children survived, all the others died, the secretary read out the report. 3 girls, orphans, and a boy, the son of Minato no Mikaze, better known as Yellow Lightning. A wave of whispers went through the hall. Minato was once a shinobi kanohi, but after the Third World War shinobi, on which he got his nickname, and became a hero. He refused the place of hokage, and went into the whirlpool, as it turned out, because of a girl. Or rather Uzumaki Tezuka, the eldest. Daughters of the clan head. Many condemned him for this. Many accepted his choice and respect him. There were even those who supported him. What are we going to do? Danza took the floor. The whirlpool are our allies, but only a few kids are left of them. I think it would be the most sensible thing to leave them alone, the elder suggested. No, Uchiha Fugaku objected. I think it's worth giving them a choice, either leave or stay, and revive their clan in Kano. I agree, Hiyashi Hyuga supported Uchiha, which was an extremely rare phenomenon. Because these clans competed for the primacy in the village. The Uzumaki clan is very strong, its techniques are unique, and there is no one in the world who could compete with them in Fuinjutsu. And if he is revived in Kano, it will give us strong warriors in the future in the long run. And how do you imagine it? We have 3 girls and 1 boy, Hokage asked. We seem to be forbidden to contain grief. In this case, I propose to submit to the council the issue of allowing promising small, or on the verge of destroying the clan. To contain grief. Danza made a suggestion. This will greatly help us in such situations in the future, because there are many clans on the territory of the country of fire, whose skills would be useful for us. A wave of whispers immediately passed through the hall. Many nodded in agreement to Shimura's words. After all, after the extreme war, Konoha's forces were somewhat undermined, and after the destruction of one of the main allies, the problem of building up combat power became extremely acute. If this is not done through the adoption of new clans and shinobi, then the burden of the next war will be borne by the Leaf clan in full. After a short discussion and voting, Danza's proposal was adopted unanimously. Okay, then the 3 of you will tell them that. Sarutobi smiled maliciously, well imagining the reaction of the little Uzumaki. What? Danza stunned the red-headed girls with a triple volley of screeching. Naruto, Fugaku and Hiyashi were standing in the hallway. The hospital where the new arrivals were sent for examination. And I warned, Naruto sighed. We want you to stay in Kano and revive your clan. The girl Danza continued to calmly explain. How? Why? Why? Questions rained down on the poor old shinobi's head. In general, you will be paid a large monthly allowance, an estate and a house will be allocated. You will get the right to become a shinobi kanohi, and the head of the clan will have a seat on the council. Just sign here. Hyuga couldn't stand it and poked the girls with a sheet. Already regretted 100 times that he supported the idea of Uchiha. They exchanged glances, and were about to respond positively when Naruto took the floor. But you can't marry anyone in the village. The blonde man stood and watched as the girls looked at him uncomprehendingly. By signing this, you are effectively becoming my wives. How? Why? Why? Uzumaki's voices switched to ultrasound, and the blond man stepped aside with an air of complete contentment. You know, I think he's just too lazy to become the head of the clan, Hyugi Fugaku whispered. I noticed it too, Hiyashi sighed, thinking how to calm the red hurricanes. Okay, calm down. I'll explain everything to you in order, Danza began, sensibly deciding that it was better for him to explain to the girls what was what and leave as soon as possible. Otherwise the head is already aching. You love your clan. But he is now destroyed. And the only one who can restore it is you. Every word was simply imbued with respect for the clan, and for the little heroes who would fight for it. Half an hour later, the ears were bursting with noodles, but the girls signed on paper with delight in their eyes, already imagining how legends would go about them. However, it soon came to an understanding of what needs to be done to restore the Uzumaki clan. The girls blushed, and at the same time shouted to the whole hospital, I will never do such things. The house that was given to Uzumaki turned out to be worthy for the head of the clan and his future wives. A large two-story mansion with a decent adjacent territory, a training ground behind it. On the ground floor, there was a large kitchen, which, apparently, was designed for 3 housewives, next to a dining room. A comfortable living room with 2 large sofas. Under the stairs leading to the 2nd floor, there was an entrance to the underground floor of the mansion, where there were storages for various edibles and a future arsenal. So there was a toilet and a bathroom on the floor, which was very convenient. On the 2nd floor, there was a large bedroom for parents with a huge double bed in the middle. In addition to her, there were 4 more rooms with single beds and a large room, which corresponded in size to the parents' room. But it was empty. There was also a room identified as an office. It had a desk, several empty shelves, and a couple of chairs. There were also separate bathrooms and a toilet on the floor. The territory of the clan's estate was also quite extensive, not like that of a Sneeze or Hyuga, but still impressive. In addition to the mansion of the head of the clan, there were 4 more houses designed for a full-fledged family. The rest of the territory was located behind the house of the head of the clan and was not built up. After examining the house, all Uzumaki met in the living room. The girls didn't know how to start a conversation. They didn't really communicate with Naruto. He was always in training with his father or mother. Naruto didn't have any friends, since he didn't see the point in it. He wanted to become stronger than his father, and friends only distract from training. But he knew these girls, because his mother was the best friend of the mothers of these girls, and helped them in every way when their parents died. The biggest room is mine, Karen brazenly declared. Why is it yours? Kushina screamed after her. Here it is. She's mine, Mito calmly remarked. A heated argument began, which was interrupted by the blonde. Cool down, the big room is mine, Naruto notified the girls, shivered from 3 destroying glances in his direction. But then calmly added, I'm the head of the clan, so I'm the biggest one. My bedroom. Hey, you'll always use this as a trump card now. The annoyed Meta was indignant, because the boy was absolutely right. It's not fair. Of course I will, because I am the head of the clan, and no one forced you to sign those papers, I held out with a mockery. Blonde. The red hair slowly began to rise up, and Naruto realized that it was time to change the subject. Because he knew perfectly well what could follow. And being beaten up or raising his hand against girls who were weaker than him was not in his principles. It was not what his father had taught him from childhood. Who can cook? Well, are we? How would it be? The girls lowered their heads and began to mumble something incomprehensible. It dawned on the blonde that the children in the shelter were not allowed into the kitchen, let alone to start learning how to cook. Okay, Naruto sighed, and immediately a memory surfaced in his head, how his mother forced him to learn to cook. With the words, everything will come in handy. I'm going to cook, but you're cleaning up. Well, the girls nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. Then let's go to training. The blonde man crossed his fingers, and 2 clones appeared. You go to the store and cook lunch. Cool. Kushina, inspired, screamed. You know shinobi techniques. We also wanted to become kunaichi, but no one wanted to teach us, they said they were too small. Well, we have a few in training before we become geniuses. The blond man folded the seals and summoned a large scroll. Here are the techniques of our clan. Many of them I already know, and I will teach them to you. But first, let's learn how to control the chakra. I know how, but you don't. Okay, then go ahead. The girls took off and rushed like red hurricanes to the backyard, where there was a training ground and a small pond. The blond man sighed, summoning another scroll that contained his father's yellow lightning techniques. I hope my second element will be Raiten. Uzumaki sighed sadly and went after the girls. 6 years later, Naruto has grown up a lot. Many people liked the tall, handsome blonde 14 years old, but no one dared to approach. He was too distant. Karen, Kushina, and Mito grew up to be beauties. At the academy, they were popular girls themselves, but they stayed away from the guys, who in turn idolized them. But they had almost no friends outside the clan, because no one likes outsiders. Naruto slept at the academy, which often brought out teachers, and the girls suffered, God knows what, but not with their studies. Naruto, after school as usual, a blonde going home alone, came up at Sasuke's sneeze. With him was his gang, Kiba Kanehamaru Sakura Ino. What do you want? Uzumaki responded. There was not a single emotion in him, except boredom. I need your help. From such a statement, the blonde shuddered. Uchiha Sasuke asks for help. The retinue looked at the best student of the academy in surprise. Sasuke, what are you doing? Kiba asked. This loser can't do anything anyway. Sasuke folded the seals and fired the fire technique into the sky. The ball of fire, after flying a sufficient distance, suddenly absorbed into the seal that appeared out of nowhere, right against the blue sky. He has put up a barrier that protects the entire village from any attack with the help of chakra. Master of Seals from the Uzumaki clan. You still think he's a loser, but Kiba. Sasuke turned to the dog breeder. That twisted from such news. A loser and a two-man master of seals. Just as Kiba had time to think, he hit the ears with a squeak of no. What makes you think he did it? Yamanaka looked at Uzumaki with a challenge. He looked at all this with such indifference that even infuriated the blonde. Which clan understands seals? Sasuke sighed. Uzumaki, Ino replied uncomprehendingly. And who are the Uzumaki here? A note of triumph from winning the argument slipped into Sneezy's voice. But there are Jimito, Kushina, and Karen, maybe it's them. The blonde answered, and Sasuke's eye twitched. Are you serious? He looked at her like she was a fool. You talked to them yourself when they told you that Naruto trains and teaches them seals. Oh yes, that's right. Sakura remembered while Sasuke was standing in the handface pose. So, Naruto. Uchiha turned to Uzumaki, but he was no longer there. That's right. The brunette, puffing with anger, went towards the blonde's house, and was there in 5 minutes. Whipping the door from the bottom of his heart, he waited until it was opened. What do you need? Naruto asked listlessly. So will you help me or not? Sasuke blushed with anger. I still don't understand what you want from me. The blonde man propped up the wall painfully. I need tattoo seals for instant recognition. Kunave and Shurikenov presented their request to the youngest son of the head of the Uchiha clan. And what will I get for it? Naruto inquired, looking around the Uchiha with a bored look. Uchiha proudly gave out my loyalty and devotion, and Uzumaki laughed. Who put you up to this? The blonde man asked through laughter. And only now did Sasuke realize how he had been divorced. Today there will be one less Uchiha, he hissed softly, and ran towards the Uchiha quarter. And I came back in the evening, terribly pleased. The door, however, was not opened to him, but Karen and Mito's screams were heard behind the house. Rushing there, he saw Kushina trying to touch Naruto with a kunai, and the others shouting something encouraging, standing on the sidelines. What he saw amazed him. Kushina moved at almost the same speed as Uchiha himself, plus very well. But it was no longer Kushina who struck, but Naruto himself, who calmly dodged. I can't beat him. A thought slipped through the Uchiha's head. The fight continued for another 5 minutes, and then Naruto instantly stamped the girl, and she froze. "That's enough for today. Then I need to talk to you," he said, addressing all three Uzumaki, after which he touched Kushina. And she moved again. "What do you want, Sasuke?" Seals, remember." I stumbled at a sneeze. Yes, Naruto followed me to the basement. There were 2 chairs and a table. "Take off your t-shirt and sit down." Uchiha obeyed and sat down in the first chair. Naruto went to the right and sat down on a chair next to some strange thing in his hand. Suddenly the device buzzed, and Uchiha noticed a needle on a huge table out of the corner of his eye. The speed jumping out of the device. "And now be patient, we'll get you a tattoo." Uzumaki began to drive the buzzing device over the brunette's skin. Uchiha himself barely restrained himself from squeaking. It turned out that the needle was constantly pricking the body, injecting ink for drawing under the skin. The process was not that painful, just a very unusual feeling. When he finished on the right side, he did the same on the left shoulder. "Well, now seal whatever you want in there. You know how?" "Yes, my brother showed," Uchiha exhaled. "Thank you." "Not yet." The blonde guy screwed up, folding the seals, and putting his hand on the Uchiha flask. A blazing hearth. Sasuke screamed from the unbearable pain all over his body. It was as if he was being roasted alive on a large fire. After a minute of torment, Uzumaki removed his hand, and Uchiha plopped down on the cold tile. The blonde looked at the starfish performed by Uchiha, and touched his finger to the throat of the one where the small seal appeared. "Mito, honey, bring me a mirror in the basement." Uzumaki's voice sounded throughout the mansion. Half a minute later, a little red Uzumaki came with a small mirror in her hand. Grabbing the blonde by the breasts, she brought his head closer to hers, since he was almost a head taller. Never having called me that, she looked him straight in the eye. "Well, I'm sorry, I forgot that you like to be called a bunny, and not the sun," Naruto replied. After which she kissed the even more reddened Uzumaki on the nose. And she ran away screaming pervert. "Get up, Sasuke-chan. Why did you do that?" The brunette croaked, getting up from the ground. "Why did I wake up your Sharingan and increase the number of chakras?" Naruto was surprised. "Well, I'm sorry, I won't next time." "Sharingan," Sasuke said, snatching the mirror out of the blonde man's hands. My Trito sparkled in my eyes. "Thank you." "Come on," Uzumaki said, climbing the stairs to the surface. Uchiha, taking the t-shirt, followed him. "You're my loyal captain." "Hey. Itachi deceived me, he said it's customary for you," Uchiha tried to justify himself. "Of course, all of our students are devoted," Naruto just nodded with an intelligent look. "But no. Damn you." Uchiha gave up, realizing that it was useless to argue with Uzumaki. Suddenly, something the size of a man with suspiciously familiar long red hair crashed into the Uzumaki walking peacefully in front. "Naruto, where have you been?" The alien shouted, pulling the blonde by the t-shirt. "I'm sorry, I was helping a friend," Naruto calmly replied, despite the fact that he was lying on his back. Kushina, blushing, got up from the blonde, and went to the room from which she had flown. "Go eat," the girl threw over her shoulder before disappearing through the door. Uzumaki calmly stood up and dusted himself off. His face didn't change at all, even Sasuke envied such composure or indifference. The brunette remembered his brother's words. The temperament of a girl from the Uzumaki clan can only withstand another Uzumaki. "Naruto, what did you say to me that she was sitting in her room all red?" Karen came down from the second floor, her glasses gleaming ominously. "Well, I'll go for it, yes." Uchiha instantly disappeared behind the door, fearing to fall under the distribution. A reference to Star Wars. A student is served. After a delicious dinner performed by Kushina, which was spent talking about abstract topics, everyone gathered in the blonde's room. The young man, having seated the girls on the bed, standing in front of them, began a conversation. "So, since I'm not going to pull everything here, I'll explain why I gathered you," Naruto said, while pulling off his t-shirt, exposing his trained and tanned body. The action was accompanied by the blushing of 3 persons in the room, who stared at him intently. Why are you undressing, a pervert? Kushina cried out a little in fright, looking at the cubes of the press. I'm going to rape you, what else? The blond man calmly replied, pretending that he was going to take off his pants, and quietly chuckling to himself. At the reaction of his roommates, the girls recoiled in fright, their faces flushed even more. But you would never do anything against our will. You promised. Karen, indignant and confused, reminded me, adjusting her glasses and trying not to look at the blonde, so as not to give her imagination extra reasons for a rampage. Yes, I remember, the blonde waved off, kneeling down in front of the girls sitting on the bed. On the right side of his chest, black lines of a strange pattern lit up, in which the trio easily recognized the seal. It was positioned vertically to disconnect to the nipple by passing it in a circle. The drawing was extremely chaotic, which was completely unlike ordinary seals. It was because of this technique that our clan was destroyed. A technique that turns a person into a monster equal in strength to Biju. Is it really that valuable? Mito asked, surprised. The girls approached almost closely, examining the seal. What do you think yourself? Naruto asked with a skeptical chuckle. To people with such a CR able to fill up a nine-tailed bija. Wow, and you're going to put these on us? Mito was curious, only now realizing how close they are to the naked body of the blonde, and with what curiosity they are looking at him. After exchanging glances, they immediately jumped away from him and started looking at the room, sitting in the same place, that is, on Naruto's bed. Well, if I didn't want to, I wouldn't have shown it, Uzumaki said, calmly dressing and noticing how the girls looked at it with relief and some annoyance. But if you don't want to, don't. And show me how it works, Kushina asked, who seemed to be disappointed that the blonde was already dressed. Naruto nodded and concentrated. The Demon Lord Mode pronounced the name of the blue-eyed technique. A moment later, a terrible black chakra enveloped him. The skin turned gray, the white of the eyes turned black, the iris became red with a vertical pupil, the hair sat and grew a little. Also, 2 large horns grew above the ears, which stuck up. The fangs and nails grew larger, the ears pointed and stretched out. The terrible power felt good at a great distance. But the house was full of masking and restrained seals installed by Naruto for just such cases. Well, the elder Uzumaki's voice sounded a little different. There was a feeling like an echo in a cave, and the voice became as if the devil himself was speaking. A dark chakra constantly swirled around the body, rising up from the legs like flames and resting on the ceiling, but on the street. It would disappear a meter from the owner. That's how I imagine it. HTTPS Vk. Com Futu 2023 59 3103 09 53 66 40. Cool. I want it that way too. Karen exclaimed in amazement, and the sisters all supported her with shouts. Yeah. Naruto grinned and turned back into a human. Okay, then let's go. The blonde waved his hand, signaling to follow him. A minute later, the whole company was already in the basement. Well, who's the first? Me. Kushina confidently declared, taking a step forward. Then undress, Naruto calmly notified the red-haired one. Uzumaki's fuse instantly disappeared, and embarrassment came in return. The girl hesitated, not knowing what to do. Well, what are you doing? And why undress? The middle one of the sisters asked, and Naruto was surprised. You know where my seal is located? The blonde man asked, arching an eyebrow. This made the girl blush even more and turned away. Come on, I saw everything there last time, when I put seals on my stomach and shoulders. We weren't even 8 then. Uzumaki was indignant, angrily looking straight into the eyes of the young man. Mito and Karen sat down on the sofa in the corner of the room and watched what their friend would do. And now we have grown up and, well, sort of. I've been spying on you in the bathroom and that's it. Sit down, Uzumaki calmly lied. Yet his father taught him from early childhood to remain calm in any situation. Don't lie, you would never do that. Naruto sighed, they knew too much about him. The blonde man was next to the girl in the blink of an eye and applied the technique of paralysis with one light and quick touch. Kushina couldn't move a finger, but that didn't mean Naruto couldn't do it for her. "Hey, Naruto!" the girl screamed, frightened, when the blonde raised her hands above her head, and they were frozen in this position. The blue-eyed man, slowly, as if mocking, pulled off the orange t-shirt, and he had a partial view of the second-sized chest, covered with a bust. Uzumaki appreciated the black lace, carefully examined the girl's bra. Boldly, however. "Hey, Mito, Karen, help!" Kushina pleaded when the impudent blonde reached for the clasp on her back. "And the defenders have already risen from the sofa to help a friend, but—" "Sit down," Naruto said imperiously. The girls instantly obeyed the order. It wasn't genjutsu or the influence of Kiev. No. Just an order. He never shouted at them, was not angry, did not take offense at them because of jokes and jokes. "I have never done anything against their will or done anything that could harm them." They didn't know why, but they couldn't disobey, they just couldn't. The imperious voice with notes of irritation, excited and chilled to the bone. They sat down and were afraid. What were you afraid of? They didn't know. The girls apologized to their friend with a glance, continuing to observe. Naruto unbuttoned the bra and lowered the girl's hands down. Kushina was not indignant, realizing that she would not be helped. And should I help her? The blonde slowly pulled off an unnecessary wardrobe item now, and the girl could move again, immediately covering her chest with her hands. "Are you shy of me? Or don't you want me to be the one looking at you?" Kushina, like the rest of the Uzumaki, only now thought about this question. Does she want someone else to see her like this? No, perhaps Naruto is the only guy she could show everything to. It was shy of him. That's right, that was exactly the problem. He and the girls recently conferred on the topic. Why am I so shy, Naruto? After all, this has never happened before. As it turned out, everyone had it at Uzumaki, but they never found the answer, hurrying. All for growing up. However, when they grew up, she did not understand. Kushina, taking a deep breath, and deciding something for herself, lowered her hands. Naruto had a view of a red face, a perfect slender figure, and beautiful breasts with defiantly pink nipples. The red-haired woman looked shy, but proud and defiant. As if asking, "What do you say now?" And the blonde man, reading the challenge in his gaze, replied, "Pervert." The blonde man chuckled, earning a look that could destroy all life on Earth. "Sit in the chair." The girl sat down and leaned back. Finding himself in a reclining position, Naruto fiddled with the typewriter, setting it up. Then he began to fill the seal. At first everything was fine, but when he started circling the end of the seal around the nipple, the show began. The girl was arching with a tonal, biting her lip, scratching the leather armrests with her nails. When the blonde finished, the red Kushina slowly and painfully rose from the chair. Not only is pervert, but also a masochist, the blonde concluded. When Kushina warily plopped down on the sofa without even getting dressed. "Go to the ass," a tired voice was heard from there. The blue-eyed man chuckled. "Noticed?" Naruto mentally turned to his inner inhabitant. "Yeah, to get an orgasm from this," the fox chuckled. "But I think it's about you." "Do you think she's a masochist?" Minato's son clarified. "All girls are partly masochists, and Uzumaki even more so," said the nine-tailed. "Why is that?" The heir of the yellow lightning inquired in bewilderment. "Because the guys from the Uzumaki clan are strongly inclined to sadism, just like you," the fox cub laughed. "Do you think she likes me as a guy?" Judging by Kushina's reaction to your last question, Todali's chuckled softly, and Naruto watched Mito take off his blue tank top. And the usual blue and white striped bra. "Let's see which of them is more prone to masochism," the blonde man suggested. "Well, everything is fine with Kushina, she is at the usual level, if I may say so," the fox thoughtfully gave out. "To me it's probably Meto. I bet on Karen." Finishing the mental dialogue, Naruto said, as Meto did not boldly lie down in the chair. "Well, is it ready?" The blonde man asked mockingly. No, the girl said. Well, that's good. Uzumaki's answer was shamelessly ignored. There was almost no difference between Kushini and Meto's bodies. The Meto turned out to be a little higher, the chest was a couple of millimeters larger, which for the blonde did not matter at all. The obvious difference was only in the skin tone. Kushina was more tanned. The girl showed the same results with Kushina. Do not rush to rejoice, Karen has not yet appeared on the podium. The fox grumbled with the hope that Karen would not be prone to masochism. Karen was almost affectionately called by the blonde. The girl pulled off her jacket, and it turned out that she had no bra at all. Even so, I was in the shower before dinner and didn't just dress. I tried to justify myself at the Uzumaki, taking off my glasses, walking up to the chair, like Meto without a top, and without covering myself with my hands. She sat down, turning her head away from the blonde, hiding her gaze. Karen was inferior to Ashina in height quite a bit. By the way, her breast volume was a couple of millimeters smaller. Working with seals allowed Naruto to accurately measure the length, width by eye. As it turned out, Karen was a real masochist. She squirmed, moaned, almost screamed, and even sometimes touched her other breast with her hand, but when she came to her senses, she took her hand away. Kushina and Meto got dressed and left at the beginning. When he finished, the blonde man looked at the girl. There was a smile on her lips. Naruto, can I ask you a favor? Karen asked softly, as soon as the blonde was about to leave. And which one? The somewhat puzzled blonde man asked. Here the girl held out a small ring for piercing. You can do it. Why don't you go to a professional? Uzumaki carefully watched as the girl brought the ring to the left nipple. I see. The blonde pulled out a book from somewhere, How to Do Piercing Correctly, and, glancing out of the corner of his eye, began cooking. Karen just chuckled. It looks like he has already read this chapter. After completing the procedure, he was pleased with himself, watching a silver ring glisten on the nipple. Thanks, but don't tell the girls. The girl, without ceasing to blush, dressed and left. Naruto stretched. The application of 3 seals took almost 2 hours. It was already getting dark outside the window. It was time to go to bed, because tomorrow he was waiting for a hard and extremely tiring day. Tomorrow the girls will go crazy because of the print. So I needed to get some sleep and gain strength. Naruto's morning, as usual, began with coffee. He sat and reviewed the scroll with the seals, thinking about what other seals to teach the girls. The blonde man had learned all the techniques from this scroll, many of which were forbidden. Of course, ideally, you need to teach the Trinity all techniques that are not dangerous for their lives. But time is short. Kushina, Mito and Karen know a lot of techniques and seals. Naruto tried to teach. They are all useful techniques, such as paralysis, sealing objects and even people, or absorbing ninjutsu. Uzumaki were very good at taijutsu and kenjutsu. Everyone without exception had their own sword. Pretty quickly, everyone learned to use Russians. Singen, of course, was not without tantrums, screams and psychos, but the girls were able to learn Minato's personal technique. The blonde taught them how to use their element correctly. As expected for all Uzumaki, the main element is the futon. Karen's second element was daten. Mito has a suten, and Kushini has a katen. To top off the picture, Naruto woke up Raiten. There was a problem with spontaneous ninjutsu. They all knew the 10 wind elemental techniques that were in Naruto's father's scroll. But there was nowhere to get the techniques of other elements. Also, the young man himself knew 5 more lightning techniques, including the Flight of the Thunder God, which he had been learning for almost 3 months with the help of hundreds of clones. Suddenly Karen was falling into the kitchen. Swaying and giggling stupidly, the girl went to the refrigerator, opening and closing it a couple of times. She turned to Naruto. What are you looking at? I liked it. The girl asked with interest, getting into a pose. However, stumbling out of the blue, she almost fell. Why is the floor so crooked? The girl left the kitchen with an indignant look, continuing to swear. And Naruto just sat there, looking at the refrigerator. How interesting, suddenly defended the blue-eyed. If I remember correctly, after receiving the seal, you lay on the couch all day and didn't even lift a finger, saying that you want to live your life on it. Somewhere in the depths of Uzumaki's subconscious, a red-eyed demon neighed. As I thought, everyone has their own extreme, the blonde sighed, realizing that it was necessary to check the others. After finishing his coffee and putting things in order on the table, Naruto went upstairs, deciding to start checking with the average of his friends. Kushina called Naruto, going up to the second floor and knocking on the girls' room. The door was not opened to him, but they deigned to answer. "What do you want?" The mistress of the room's voice was agitated. "You're all right?" the young man asked. "Oh yes, of course, ahaha," Kushina replied. From the sounds coming from the room, it seemed that she was hiding something. "Can I come in?" The blonde man added a suspicious note to his voice, and Uzumaki leaned in. Of course, when Naruto opened the door, he immediately smelled an unusual smell. Kushina was a little red and disheveled, diligently averted her gaze to the side. "Has something happened?" the blue-eyed man asked, who was increasingly interested in the reasons for the girl's behavior. No, not at all." The girl waved her hands and shook her head. Naruto sniffed. The smell came from Uzumaki herself, and for some reason, this smell made the heart beat twice as fast. "Well then, if anything, call okay." After the blonde's words, the girl thought for a second, then blushed to horror, and pushed Uzumaki out of the room, closing herself from the inside. Kurama, what a strange smell. Naruto decided to ask for help from a friend in this matter, who definitely knew more about it than him. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough," the fox grinned. He seemed to be having fun. Naruto walked around the house in search of Meto, but did not find her. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, and Naruto trudged to open it. "Yes, my faithful disciple." With these words, the blonde opened the door, seeing the younger Uchiha outside the threshold. "Very funny. You, instead of joking, better look who's standing on your roof," advised Sasuke. Uzumaki went outside, and saw not the one who was standing in black pants, safely taken from Naruto, a black jacket, and with some kind of red blanket on the back, attached to the neck. "I'm a super ninja. Mrs. Justice." The girl was ranting, standing in a cool superhero pose, stretching her index finger in a direction known only to her. Uzumaki noticed that a trio of friends of Karen, Mito and Kushina, that is, Sakura and Noa Hinata, were moving towards them from the next street. "Hey Mito, what are you doing there?" Ino shouted as soon as they reached Uzumaki's house. Uzumaki did not answer, continuing to stand proudly on the roof. The girls approached Naruto and Sasuke. "What's going on here?" Sakura Uzumaki asked in surprise. "What are you talking about?" "Everything is as usual," Naruto calmly assured with a calm expression on his face. "Yes, as usual," Eno shouted, who found himself close to the blonde ignoring everyone. The instant between them turned out to be Meto, covering Eno with itself. "Beware, girl, he's dangerous," Mito said, standing in a fighting stance. "He's a potential rapist." "What are you talking about, Mito?" "I didn't understand Hinata. Yesterday, this pervert highlighted my breasts." The girl pointed at Uzumaki with her finger. "And Kushina Skorin too." "It's true." The girls blushed, and Sasuke turned away to hide the blush on the pale Uchiha skin. After all, many people stared at the trio of girls at Uzumaki, and he was no exception either. Yes, he's a pervert," Uzumaki assured everyone, which Naruto didn't even turn an ear to. "Naruto?" With a wild scream, Karen flew at the blonde man, who was not taking any action, and hung on his neck. The girl looked at him with a manic gleam in her eyes. "Let's go fuck." From such a statement, everyone was stunned. The girls looked at the Jinchuriki in shock. And Sasuke let out a fountain of blood from his nose. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" angrily shouted at the blue-eyed Sakura. "Sleep," barely audibly say Naruto, Karen and Miten instantly fell asleep, and the Jinchuriki, just taking them both on his shoulder, stomped into the house. "Hey, where did you take them?" The pink-haired girl was indignant. "How to where?" Uzumaki made an uncomprehending pug. "Fuck, of course." After such a statement, Hinata fainted. Sasuke tried not to laugh out loud, while Sakura and Ino tried to come to their senses. Uzumaki disappeared into the house with his luggage. "My god. The blond man sighed heavily, throwing his burden on the sofas in the living room. Drunk and Batman. Leaving the girls to rest for an hour or two, Naruto went to the kitchen, sitting down at the table. He took out a scroll, and, spreading it out on the table, began to read. Once again returning to thinking about what exactly to teach the girls next. Today it was Kushina's turn to cook, and she, humming some cheerful melody, she cut something near the stove. There was a strong smell coming from the girl. The heightened charm of the young Jinchurika was exciting, making the blood flow faster through the veins, and the heart was pounding wildly in the chest. Consciousness began to draw the most obscene pictures with the participation of a girl. Naruto realized that this smell makes him excited. Shaking his head, he took control of his raging instincts and emotions. Kushina, something happened. The blond man was curious, coming up and standing next to him, watching how the girl skillfully cuts vegetables. The red-haired girl cut herself in surprise, and Jinchuriki, taking her wounded hand in his, licked a small scratch with the tip of his tongue. "What are you doing?" The girl cried out, somewhat shocked, flushed, but did not remove her hand. "Naruto, listen." The guy gently kissed the girl's wrist, while looking into her eyes. Kushina blushed even more than before, and silently stared at the guy. "And if it's true?" the blue-eyed man asked, looking straight into the eyes of the confused girl. "Girls. Well." Uzumaki held out her hand, withdrawing her hand and lowering her head. "I've been feeling weird since yesterday." "Don't be afraid, it's because of the seal, it will pass by tomorrow," Naruto assured the girl. She, delighted, continued to cook, occasionally glancing at the young one, sitting back down in the chair. The smell intensified, flashed through the guy's head. Feeding the chakra into his nose, Naruto sniffed carefully. The smell really intensified a couple of times, and it came from Kushina. Jinchuriki caught himself thinking that he was closely watching an appetizing ass. A girl who was covered in just white shorts. For some reason, right now he wanted to walk with the palm of his hand over the beautiful slender legs. Hug the slender and beautiful body of the girl tightly to him. No, of course, this has happened before. He's a normal guy. And all guys have such desires. But before, he calmly restrained himself, since his mind was the main thing, and did not allow instincts and hormones to take over him. But that wasn't it now, not at all. Even all of his iron, will and ability to control himself was not enough to restrain lustful thoughts and desires. Although it was no longer lust or physical need, it was hunger. "It will be ready soon," Kushina announced loudly, merrily humming some tune, stirring something in the pan, apparently feeling his hungry gaze on her. A look, and thus decided to bring him to himself. "Ah, yes, thank you." The blonde was grateful to her for this almost shout. She has always had a good ability to understand and diffuse difficult situations. "Bijou for my barbecue," someone shouted from the corridor. There was no doubt that it was Karen. "There is no bijou, but there will be ramen," Kushina replied, smiling. "Nishtyak." The girl landed heavily on the chair opposite the blonde. "I haven't sobered up yet," the blonde man asked, arching an eyebrow, seeing with what interest the girl was looking around the room. "What are you doing?" "I don't drink at all," the girl confidently declared, after which she thought, giggled and pointed at the guy with her finger. "I'm just so cheerful in life." "You go wake up Batman, Robin." The blonde sighed heavily when the girl with the offended pug went towards the living room on the way to shout something about white roses. "Day off. Don't rush anywhere or go. It's not your turn to make breakfast." From the realization of these pleasant facts, Kushina broke into a blissful smile and stretched lying in bed. The sun shone warmly through the window, warming with its warmth. A pleasant cool summer breeze blew from the open window. Uzumaki turned on her side and buried her face in someone's hot stomach. "Ah!" She was about to scream at the full power of her Uzumaki lungs, but she was stopped by the guy's hand. "I'm sorry," muttered the blond man, who even reacted to the possible danger in his sleep. Now he hovered over the girl with one hand, holding her right hand over her head, and with the other, which a second ago was used as a gag, he leaned near her head. Why are you shouting early in the morning, Ava? Naruto, why am I in your bed? The girl asked the question, waiting until the guy pulls away and lies down next to her. Stop. A thought flashed through her mind. She instantly pulled up the dark red sheet that covered her body and was sure of her guess. She was completely naked. Naruto, why am I naked? For the same reason as me, the guy shrugged, calmly sitting down on the edge of the bed. And Kushina noticed that his back and shoulders were decorated with a lot of scratches. Suddenly, the blonde man got to his feet, and the girl pulled the sheet up, covering her face. Get dressed and leave. The red-haired woman almost screamed. I need to get dressed. And why leave? The elder Uzumaki asked, walking around the bed on the way, putting on his pants, and sitting down next to Kushina, who carefully did not look at him. I've already seen everything there. You promised that against your will. Never a word. Uzumaki squeezed out of herself by force in front of her eyes. Tears welled up. Already ready to start Kushina's tantrum, Naruto stopped. I disgust you. The blonde man asked a direct question. The girl looked at him in surprise. Immediately, a kunai appeared in his hand, which he threw on the bed next to the girl. Uzumaki himself knelt down next to the bed. I didn't fulfill my promise. You set a condition. If you lie, we will kill you. The blue eyes calmly looked at the girl, waiting for her reaction. Come on, the young man said calmly. His voice did not waver, and he continued to stare intently into the girl's eyes. He was completely confident in his words, as his father had taught. There was no doubt after the decision was made. The girl got out of bed, wrapped her body in a sheet, and approached the guy with a kunai in her right hand. First show me how it happened, Kushina asked in a trembling voice. His hands were trembling treacherously, refusing to hold the weapon properly, and the kunai could fall out at any moment. I want to know why you did it. It's so important. The elder Uzumaki inquired in an even and calm voice, instilling calmness with his whole appearance. For me, yes. Kushina said softly, continuing to squeeze the kunai that had become damn heavy. Whatever you say. The guy folded a couple of seals in a moment and looked into the girl's eyes. Flashback. After a delicious dinner, the whole company settled down in the living room on the sofas, happy with life. Okay, so I've refreshed myself, so it's time for my post, Mito suddenly said. What kind of post? Kushina did not understand. I miss justice. The girl declared, suddenly taking off from her seat and jumping on the table, stood in the pose of a superhero. I am the nightmare of all criminals and perverts. And what was there about the toast? Karen giggled, adjusting her glasses. Naruto sat and looked at Karen, then at Kushin. Then on something shouting Meto. What is it? The fox spoke up. Do you remember when you asked me the question, which one of them do you love? The blonde man inquired. Well, you said then that you didn't know. What have you learned so far? The fox looked at his friend with interest. No, I don't quite understand what kind of feeling love is. The blonde with one neat movement put Karen to sleep, who climbed for sake, and sent the clone to bring her into the room. While the double carried out the order, the blonde continued the internal dialogue. It's hard to explain, thought Kyubi, scratching his chin with a clawed paw. Let's use an example, Naruto asked, noticing Kushina's strange look on himself. But as soon as he looked at her, she turned away, continuing to talk to Mito. Well, look, you have a choice to leave 3 people out of 6. 3 will continue to live in peace, and 3 that you will not choose. They'll feed me. The fox began to state his thought, while Naruto was looking at Meto, who was trying to dance on the ceiling. Choose from Karen, Kushina, Mito, Sakura, Ino, and Tenten. Who will you give me to feed? Obviously, he would have left Uzumaki, the blonde replied without hesitation. Why? The nine-tailed one asked a question. The others don't belong to me, Naruto shrugged. Ah, you reason with your head, not with your heart. The fox sighed bitterly. Okay, now choose another example from Uzumaki. Who's going to feed me? In that case, you would have gone on a diet. Naruto didn't hesitate to answer. Oh? Why? The fox grinned contentedly. There are already too few of us left, the blond man gave out a logical thought. No, your brain would have left one. It is also easier to establish relationships and revive the clan. But you don't want to lose any, the young man thought. Indeed, it was his cold logic, but why can't he refuse even one? And now think about it. Which of them are you ready to live your life with? Which one of them do you want to see your children from? The fox almost whispered like a real snake catcher, afraid to knock down the mood of his Jinchuriki. And trying to lead to the obvious conclusion. And with whom would you like? Which of them attracts you more? It doesn't matter, Uzumaki replied after a moment of silence. But there's a problem. Which one? The fox, whose eye was already twitching, asked in bewilderment. I don't mind. Although no, not even that, I want children from each of them. Them. Karen, Kushina, Mito, are completely different with their pros and cons. Each one is unique. So I can't choose one of them, the fox thought. Well, then I don't see a problem, the tailed one lay down on the ground. But how do they feel about me? The guy thought about it. Suddenly they don't like me. What if each of them loves some guy? So ask then, the fox yawned, laying his muzzle on his paws. So I will do it, the blonde confidently said, getting up and going to the second floor. Not forgetting to pick up the already cut down Kushina pan, meadow. After putting Uzumaki to bed, he left. In the corridor, he collided with Kushina, who crashed into his chest. I'm sorry, I was thinking, the red-haired woman said in a barely audible voice, rubbing her bruised nose against the guy's broad chest. Nothing, the blond man followed the girl with his gaze until she disappeared behind the door of her room. The smell? That heady smell again. Even now, when Naruto was not strengthening his charm with the help of the chakra, he felt it. My head was clouded, but Uzumaki quickly pulled himself together. I'm going to get some coffee, he turned to himself and stomped into the kitchen. It was already night, but Naruto did not sleep, he had too much coffee. He was lying on the bed and reading a book. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. What is Kushina? The door opened and Uzumaki entered the room. She came over and sat down on the guy's bed, while not looking at him, but studying the floor. Naruto can be asked. She began hesitantly. Come on, putting the book aside, Naruto said. Do you like any girl? Without raising her eyes, the red-haired woman asked a question. Yes, the blond man took it away in monosyllables. Clearly. And who? The red-haired woman gave out with pressure, but immediately corrected herself when she met the young man's blue eyes. If you don't want to, you don't have to tell me. Perhaps I'll refrain, Naruto said. Can I ask a question now? Yes, of course, the girl of the timeless turned away. Do you love me? The blond man asked head-on. Somewhere in the subconscious, the paw of the forest met with the muzzle of the same forest with a magic sound. The old Biju clearly did not expect such straightforwardness from his Jinchuriki. Kushina turned around and stared at Naruto in shock. And now the blonde could see perfectly well that the girl's whole face was red. What are you doing? Kunaichi jumped up, clearly not expecting such questions. The young man calmly stood in front of the girl. A couple of sheets appeared in his hand. Papers. Remember, you can't have an official relationship with anyone but me. Yes, Kushina didn't understand what all this was about. Uzumaki went to the bedside table and took the scissors from it, giving the girl both items, and he sat down on the bed. This is the original. The guy looked attentively at the incomprehensible Kushina. If you don't love me, then there's no need to force yourself. Chick, and all you have nothing to do with me. The girl looked attentively at the blonde, then at the sheets in her hands. After a moment of thought, she approached Uzumaki. And you? She gave him the contract and the scissors. Naruto didn't even think, just threw both objects on the floor. Grabbing the girl by the waist, he pulled her towards him, forcing her to sit on his lap. She didn't resist. He looked into her eyes. You can. Kushina didn't answer, just kissed the blonde. Breaking away after 5 minutes, she quietly said, "Yes, I love." End flashback. So I confessed. Kushina jumped out from the guy, throwing kunai. After the jump, she ended up on the bed. Landing belly down, she buried her head in the pillows. Naruto got up and sat on the bed, looking at the girl's back. Slowly, his gaze dropped to Uzumaki's fifth point. "Hey." "What?" The guy calmly sat with his hand on the girl's ass. However, she didn't even try to counteract this, she just lay there, though she took her head out of the pillows. "Why are you touching me?" the girl asked in an indignant tone, although she herself was pleased with this. "And what is not allowed?" the guy asked in mock surprise, starting to slowly move his hand. The girl, avoiding such a shy action, rolled a couple of times to the side in the middle of the bed. "Of course, you can't." Kushina's face turned red. Naruto moved closer to her, hanging over her closely. "Really? What a pity," the guy said and kissed Kushina. She, despite her words, did not resist and even began to answer. "I think I can make an exception," Uzumaki said with a satisfied smile, pulling away from the young man. "But, so that no one knows." "Whatever you say," Naruto wasn't going to wait any longer. He carefully began unwinding the sheet. Kushina buried herself in the guy's thick hair, continuing to kiss him. "I love you. And I'm you," red-haired, buried my nose in the guy's chest, snuggling up to him. "Naruto, someone has come to see you." Karen came into the room at a bad time. "I'll explain everything," Kushina immediately assured, and Naruto looked quite calmly at Uzumaki frozen in the doorway. "Naruto, come to you came." Karina lowered her head so that her eyes could not be seen. The guy got out of bed and, wearing a t-shirt on the way, went to the first floor, hearing after him. "And call Meto here." "Okay," it came from the corridor. "And now, dear," Karen radiated a dark, terrible energy, and Kushina thought that her inglorious end had come. But Uzumaki surprised her. "Tell me how it went." "What?" Kushina cried out in shock. "Let's go into details." Mito flew into the room, and, instantly understanding the situation, acted like any other girl. Correctly climbed with questions. Chapter 6 Naruto went down to the first floor and went into the living room. An elderly woman with long pale red hair, half of which was already gray, was waiting for him there. The guest sipped tea and looked around the room. "Do you need something from me?" the blonde man asked, sitting down on the sofa opposite the woman. "You are Naruto." The young man nodded positively, and the guest continued, "My name is Tatsumi Uzumaki. I have 3 girls in my upbringing. Their mother, my daughter, died when she was in the whirlpool, and their father was on a mission even earlier. I lived outside the whirlpool, and she brought them to me on vacation, so to speak. On the day of the destruction of the village, for some reason, the daughter was called to the village. She didn't go back to the children." "And what do you want from me?" The guy was not touched by the story, because he had long been used to hearing stories about orphaned children. The blonde's reaction somewhat surprised the woman. The younger girls were 3 years old at the time. "But they will not dent either their mother or their father." The guest lowered her head, looking at the floor. "I lied to them that their parents were alive, and asked the eldest to play along with me. I convinced them that they were shinobi, and could not come to them because of the missions." The woman got up from the sofa, and approached to the guy, bowing low, she spoke without unbending. "Please, Naruto-sama, shelter my granddaughters in your clan. They are pure-blooded Uzumaki," the woman gave out. Naruto wasn't surprised. From the first words of the guests, he understood why she was here. "All right, they're with you." Tatsumi raised her head and smiled faintly. "Yes, they are in a park not far from here," the guest quickly responded. "Tell me about them." The woman sat down on the sofa and sighed bitterly. "The eldest Tao, the same age as you. A kid, and has an unpleasant habit of swearing." "Okay, and the rest?" Naruto asked. "Twins Aki and Yuki. They are now 6 years old. Both are very energetic and funny girls. So they don't know who their parents are." Yes, Tao knows everything, but Aki and Yuki don't. The old lady looked at Naruto. I really ask you to play along with me. You do understand that it will not be possible to change the topic forever, and one day the question will become very acute. The blonde man asked. And Uzumaki smiled slyly, and now the blonde began to guess what exactly he should play along with this woman. Or do you want to say that you should call yourself their father? The guests finished the thought for the young man. I will be 15 years old in 4 months, as you imagine. The guy raised his eyebrows skeptically. Ah, the old lady waved her hand. The main thing is that they believe now, and then they will not worry about such trifles. Okay, you know better, you're their grandmother after all. Let's go find them. The blonde was about to get up, but Uzumaki stopped him with her hand. There's no need, I'll bring them myself. Tatsumi folded the seal of concentration and disappeared, leaving a cloud of smoke in the air. The blonde man nodded to himself and went to the second floor. Are you absolutely sure? Already climbing the stairs, he heard a lively argument of the girls. What if you get knocked up? This statement made Naruto stop. Fuck, I didn't think, flashed through his head. However, a second later, he continued to rise, arguing that. So, restore the clan. Don't drift. I killed your sperm cells with my chakra, the fox spoke, so she won't get pregnant, at least this time. Thank you. The blonde man went into his room, where Karen Smeto was sitting on the floor next to the bed. Akashina changed the sheets, being dressed in her yesterday's shocks. And a blonde t-shirt that was obviously too big for her. We have a replenishment. All the girls looked at Naruto carefully. 3 girls, 1 of our age, and twins 6 years old, no parents. This is, of course, good, but what's next? The girls singled out in the eyes. The guys sneered and knew that he was about to say something epic. It was the same when they received the Demon Lord's technique, and when he trained them in using it. Every time everything was cooler than the previous one, then undress. Then make a bomb capable of destroying the entire village from the floor of the turn. But they didn't even know what to expect now. Congratulations, Kashina, you're a mother now. And that's it. Silence? What? The twins think they are going to their long-dead mom and dad, Uzumaki explained. Clearly, the girl froze. Shocked looking at the blonde. And why me? Because you and I have been doing nothing all night long. Stop. Uzumaki interrupted the guy. I get it. And where will we place them? Mito asked, just coming out of her trance. The eldest will go to the spare room, and tomorrow we will buy furniture for the twins' room, Naruto explained. Why not today? Kashina asked, having already finished with the bed. The shops are closed on Sunday, Karen explained. The twins will sleep at my place, but I can't. On the couch. The blonde man turned around and left. Going down to the first floor, he heard the girls talking again. I told you'd get knocked up. After some 15 minutes, there was a knock on the door, and Naruto trudged to open it. When he opened it, he saw an excited grandmother. 2 cute blonde girls about 6 years old, their black eyes looked with interest and excitement. Behind them, he saw a red-haired girl in a hat, who looked at him as an enemy of the people. Hello, come in. The blonde man calmly went into the living room, and the whole company followed him. Now the housewives were not there, they went to the store for a delicious meal. So Tatsumi began. Aki, Yuki, here's your dad. The girls did not react to the grandmother's words in any way, looking at the blonde, frowning. And Naruto looked at them with a stony face. Dad? The girls bent down on Naruto, hugging and saying something about how happy they are. Tue just snorted and continued to look around the room. Girls, at least introduce yourself, otherwise he only saw you in diapers. Grandma relaxed when she saw that everything went smoothly. The girls immediately got off their father and stood in front of him. I'm Aki. And I, Yuki the blonde, groaned inwardly. The girls were absolutely no different. The same clothes, the same voice, the same way of speaking. Even the hairstyles were not a millimeter different. Thank the gods that at least the chakra was a little different. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, your father. The blonde was absolutely calm, which struck Taya. And the girls looked at him with a strange look that he immediately noticed. Something's wrong. Grandma told us that you're on a mission, and therefore you can't come, and you're just resting here, or something. Why didn't you come to us earlier? Aki spoke with resentment in her voice. Granny tensed, and Tu watched with a malicious smile how the blonde would get out. I would have come, but I was busy rebuilding the clan. The girls looked at him with interest. Recovery? Yes, I went here to our allies to negotiate protection and assistance. In words, everything is simple, but as you can see, it took a lot of time. The blonde man looked at his daughters with honest eyes themselves. Let's act them words for one place, advised the fox. The blonde got up and approached the girls, looking at their cute faces. He did not notice that he smiled at the corners of his lips. Kneeling down, he hugged the girls. I'm sorry, I'm a bad father. The girls hugged their father, and tears appeared in their eyes. No, Daddy's good, Yuki stammered. Yes. Aki jumped up. Uzumaki smiled even wider and slightly opened his eyes. Tao looked at him, blushing with surprise, though then she looked away. After about 10 minutes, the girls calmed down and sat on Naruto's lap. For some reason, Tu looked anywhere but at the blonde, and the grandmother herself sat and let out rays of kindness. Is something wrong with Tiao? Uzumaki asked, looking at her granddaughter. No, it's fine. The girl looked at the blonde man who was listening to stories from his daughters, after which the young Uzumaki's face flamed red. Damn blonde. It flashed through the red-haired woman's head why he was smiling so much. We're home. There was a shout from the corridor, along with the rustle of packages. 3 girls entered the room. Meet me, it wasn't Meto, Kushina and Karen. He introduced Naruto as they entered. The little girls looked at Uzumaki in surprise. Naruto did not introduce the guests, so as not to arouse suspicion from Aki and Yuki. And which one of them is Mom? Yuki asked, looking at the blonde. She nodded. The blonde was about to answer, but in time he saw sad notes in the eyes of Karen and Mito. Do they want to become a mom? The fox was surprised. It looks like yes, the blonde thought for a second. Are you serious? The fox asked, realizing in which direction he was carried. It's not going to work. That's where the problem is. The blonde man smiled slyly, not listening to the fox. I do not know which of the 3 of them is your mother. Everyone froze uncomprehendingly, looking at each other. And Naruto quietly laughed at the situation. I eat, but how is it? Aki asked, looking at her father with incomprehension. Your dad, so Mom's your wife. I have 3 wives. The blonde man's face expressed complete calmness and honesty. Do we have 3 moms? Yuki asked, batting her eyes. Yes, Uzumaki replied. And as soon as he said this with the girls, the same situation repeated as with him a few minutes earlier. The little ones climbed on them chirping something, and the girls squeezed and hugged them. Everyone seems happy. This freak has got himself into grief here. Teo thought, looking at the blonde with anger. That bastard, I bet he makes them do all sorts of perversions. Well, I'll arrange anything for you. The day came to an end, and Tatsumi, saying goodbye, went to her hotel room. She needs to get some sleep, she's on her way tomorrow morning. The guys had dinner and talked about a lot. The girls went to the bathroom together, fortunately, its size quite allowed it. After that, everyone went to bed. However, Naruto didn't have to sleep on the couch. Dad, come to bed with us, Aki mumbled sleepily, pushing the blonde in front of her towards the bedroom. Yuki was already there. Naruto lay down in the middle of the bed, dressed as usual, in gray pants and the same t-shirt. The girls put on their pajamas and hugged the blonde's hands, began to snore sweetly. Uzumaki smiled and closed his eyes. Yeah. Never? Do you hear, never sleep longer than your children. It was such thoughts that flashed through Naruto's mind. The blonde's morning began with a loud get up, Dad. Jumping of the bare legs on the stomach and chest. The beginning of the day was unusually loud. Two small hurricanes were flying around the house, not forgetting to loudly stomp their bare feet on the floor, depriving the rest of the residents of the house of chances to sleep a little more. 3 ringing voices came from the kitchen. Dishes were rattling, and the bath was already occupied by someone. The young head of the clan had to go to the shower on the first floor, jumping aside every time something blonde appeared in the corridor. Otherwise, the risk of getting into someone's stomach is very high. Going into the kitchen, he found out that Meto had taken the bath, since everyone else had already gathered there. Even the twins, having overtaken the blonde at the last turn, were already sitting at the table and eating pancakes with chocolate. At the first cosmic speed. Karen Kashina. The girls interrupted their conversation with Teyuya and looked at the disheveled and sleepy Uzumaki. You will spend the rest of the time before the exam teaching the name of Janina to Taya, show her everything there and look after her. I will solve this issue. Well, the girls agreed, continuing the interrupted conversation, and the blonde finally got to the bathroom. After changing clothes and having breakfast, Naruto was about to go to Hokage, but he was stopped by Aki and Yuki. Can we go with you, Dad? Having made a cute little face, the twins asked. You wanted to go shopping, choose furniture for your room, did you really change your mind? The blonde man was a little surprised. Moms will figure it out without us. Smiling, Aki confidently declared. And my sister is with them, so they will choose for themselves, Yuki assured. That I don't mind the company. And where are we going? The girls asked the question with lively interest, after a moment, already shod in sandals resembling ninja shoes. To Hokage, and seeing the question in the eyes of the blondes, Uzumaki hurried to answer him. He's kind of the boss here. I need to tell him that you are going to live with us now, issue the appropriate documents for you. And only he can solve the issue of enrolling Taui in Kursk together with the others. Of course, the girls shouted at the same time, and were the first to rush out into the street. The blonde man followed them. The twins looked around the village, constantly asking the young man something, and Naruto willingly answered the fidgets, telling about the most remarkable places of the village. At a calm pace, and almost without incident, they reached Hokage's office. After knocking and going inside, Naruto saw a whole meeting. However, he was not surprised, he knew what it was about, and that they were waiting for him. In addition to the head of the village, to Anbu, 2 Janins, elders and Shimura Danza, the head of the Anbu root, were present in the office. The appearance of Uzumaki in the company of 2 little girls made those present surprised for a moment. Hello, Naruto. Hokage was the first to speak, recovering himself the fastest. Would you introduce us to your companions? Hello, old man. This is Aki and Yuki. The blonde man pointed at the Uzumaki girls in turn. Dad, who is this? Yuki pointed at a blonde ninja with a mask covering his entire face except for his eye. In the looks and faces of the audience, complete fucking firm such a statement of the child was already read. Kakashi, Dad replied, trying to capture the surprised face in his memory. Kakasha. Aki asked uncertainly. Jui grunted approvingly, trying not to laugh. Wait for me outside the door, I'll sort things out now, and we'll go somewhere, the blonde asked his daughters, and they obediently left. And 2 of his bodyguards followed them, following a barely noticeable movement of the Hokage's head. So, Naruto, I will leave for later the topic of how and why you became a father at the age of 14. And I will immediately proceed to the purpose of our meeting. Hokage was the first to take the floor as soon as the door closed behind the blondes. Shimura Danza, you were accused of organizing an attack on a Kano-Halide village hidden in a whirlpool. What? The old man screamed, but after a moment, he realized that he could not move. Casting a look of hatred at Uzumaki, for it was not difficult to understand for him who exactly used the seal of paralysis. You can't prove anything. Hokage has already interrupted, throwing a weighty folder on the table. Several of the attackers survived then, and with the help of Naruto, we cracked your seal, then Yamanaka entered the game. Damn it! The old man swore, trying to use the chakra, which he could not do because of the proximity of the one who imposed Fuin. And now what? Will you put me in jail? No, you didn't attack my village. Shimura glanced at the blonde man, from whom a heavy chakra emanated, causing his essence to shake with horror. "And what are you going to do to me, Uzumaki?" The traitor tried to be sarcastic. "Kill for revenge." No, a small black crystal appeared in his hands, suspended from an iron fishing line. "I will seal you, and you will sit in the seal forever. Well, or until the earth disappears." "You wouldn't dare." Danza was seriously scared, because the blonde could carry out his plans. "You can't." The forbidden fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan. The seal of eternal captivity, white darkness. Uzumaki folded 40 seals in just 10 seconds. In the next instant, the former head of the Anbu root found himself in a strange place. Colorless white space. There are no sounds, there is nothing. Emptiness and him. "Well, that's it," Naruto chuckled, throwing the crystal on Hokage's table. "Even I won't be able to remove the seal now. And what awaits him there? Eternal hunger, thirst or torture?" Suma asked. "No, there is absolutely nothing where he got to." "Old man, what's up with my request?" The blonde man shifted his gaze to Hokage. "Yes, here." Chorizan put 3 vests of Chunin and 1 of Janin on the table. "You are Janine, Medokaran, and Kushina Chunina." Hokage herself, he didn't even graduate from the academy, the elder tried to intervene. "He is stronger than most of our Janins, and his wards are in no way inferior in strength to our best Janins." "While the truth is they don't have enough experience," Hokage replied, saying the last words under his breath. "So when all 4 of them gain experience, I will translate the Wanbu." Then here, Uzumaki handed over several sheets of completed documents with Urutobi. "Tu, my yearling, enter her in the list of graduates, and the little ones who are waiting outside the door. We'll go to the academy in a year. Okay, by the way, you're going to be the mentor of the 7th team." "That's where I'm going to shove your taya," smiled the 3rd. Anbu behind his back began to whisper about replenishing the Uzumaki harem. But Naruto himself didn't care much. "Come to the distribution at 11 o'clock. "Oh yes. Your girls will become chunins after passing the exams." "I'm aware, thank you." The blonde man bowed, hid the vests in the seal, went out into the corridor, where the blonde Uzumaki were waiting for him. However, the shadows were bored. As it turned out, 3 girls from Anbulet 20 were sitting next to them. It was clearly a pleasure for them to babble with little cuties. "Dad." They were delighted with the appearance of Uzumaki Devanki. "Naruto, when did you have time?" One of the Anbu girls in the owl mask was surprised. "While you were on a mission," the older blonde man calmly replied. "Okay, we'll go while the patient is." "Don't call me that." The owl was indignant. "There was only one time." Yes, the girls behind the owl were secretly laughing, and Uzumaki continued. "You haven't given up trying to catch that unicorn. Look, they'll take you back to the nut house." Yes, it was genjutsu. The owl has already started screaming, completely forgetting where it is. "You know that very well. It was you who took this seal off me." Yes, Uzumaki turned around at the exit and looked at the girl as if he was very sorry for her. "Just don't be nervous, otherwise anything can happen." Such Anbu could not stand it and began to laugh at his girlfriend. And the owl itself, cursing the blonde asshole, moved with Shunshin to the landfill to calm down, turning innocent mannequins into dust. As soon as the trio was on the street, Aki decided to ask a question. "Dad. And why was she looking for a unicorn? They don't exist." The blonde man chuckled. "Her enemy on a mission has put a seal on her, which immerses the victim in genjutsu as soon as she uses the chakra. But for some reason, the seal did not work immediately. But when she returned from the mission and went to training, the seal began to show her everything. Half of the village tried to catch her then. And she was running around the roofs after the unicorn." "Wow, that's all I could do," Yuki replied. "Where are we going?" Naruto asked, looking at his daughters, who were carefully looking around. Their Aki poked up somewhere. Looking up, he saw the Hokage monument, where the faces of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Hokage were carved. "Okay, hold on." Uzumaki took both of them in his arms. The girls put their arms around their father's neck and looked ahead, not understanding why he picked them up. But of course, when your dad carries you in his arms, it's very nice. So the blondes, smiling contentedly, waited for what would happen next. And they waited. The blond man rushed with the load along the roofs to the cliff, and then, without slowing down, ran up to the very top of the steep wall. Standing on the head of the third, Aki shouted something about how fast they were flying. And Yuki clung to the blonde's t-shirt and looked at the breathtaking little heart of the beautiful view that opened up in front of her. After 20 minutes, the tummies of the little Uzumaki demanded lunch. "I want to eat," Yuki demanded with a pitiful face. "Our hostesses are not at home yet, so let's go to a cafe." "Ramen," commanded Aki. The blonde man smiled. "Well, then you'll get the best ramen there." "Yes." The little girl screamed with joy when the blonde rushed down the same cliff. The last month before the exam, Naruto hardly saw Taya. 3 Uzumaki were closely engaged in training. However, sometimes they did intersect. On the stairs, for example, when she went to her room after training, barely standing on her feet, and completely oblivious to what was happening around her. Or in the morning in the kitchen. However, when he came there, the girl was already leaving for training, warming up with him in the doorway. As a result, Naruto has hardly communicated with Tayuya since their acquaintance. But he spent more than enough time with his daughters. In the morning, we played in their room, which cost a round sum, since the Uzumaki really wanted to please the girls. So there was an exorbitant amount of toys here. Closer to lunch, the training began, which Aki and Yuki asked for, as they wanted to become very strong ninjas. Their newfound father did not give them anything complicated. Jogging is a weak exercise for strengthening the body and training in throwing cold weapons. And already in the evening, the girls went to their mothers, helping to cook. More precisely, they studied, but since there is nothing to learn here, and they can all call it help anyway. In the evening, when tired Aki and Yuki went to bed together with the same tired Tayuya, Karen, Kushina and Mito went out to hunt poor Uzumaki. They even made a schedule of who and when to fuck with him. Sleeping in general. As soon as the daughters moved into their room, Karen visited the blonde. However, remembering her tendency to masochism, Naruto had a very good night. The next night, Meto burst in with the cries of a traitor and attacked the young man, demanding warmth and affection. Then it was Kushina's turn, which he noticed already lying in his bed when he came out of the shower. To the question, "What are you doing here?" the logical answer followed, "I'm sleeping." However, Naruto did not manage to sleep. Resigned to the lack of sleep, which has become habitual lately, the blonde went to the academy. Today is the last day of study in the walls of the building. Everyone passed the exam yesterday. So, when there was no one to leave the chalks with, the blonde took them with him. Kushina, Karen and Mito were sitting in the classroom with the rest of the newly minted genins, waiting for the announcement of the distribution list by teams. The blonde man calmly walked down the corridor with Aki and Yuki to the office next to the graduate class. Going there, he saw the Janins who had come to accept the commands of a certain Hokage. Among the gathered shinobi were Kakashi, whom the blonde twins recognized, and immediately started asking questions. And Suma, who put out his cigarette when the blondes appeared. Kurenai, who, having just looked at the little Uzumaki, smiled dreamily, cast a fleeting interested glance at the son of Hokage. Also present were Guy and Iruka, and several other shinobi that Naruto was not familiar with. "Hello," said the blonde. In response, I heard the same greetings from Kirin and Asuma. Gay and Ruka just nodded, and Kakashi raised his hands in greeting. "Naruto, you're behind the team." Haddock was surprised, trying to keep the mask on his face, attempts to pull off which were made by Uzumaki Jr. "Yes," the blonde man answered in monosyllables, sitting down on the windowsill, smiling inwardly at the action of his daughters. "I hope one of your girls will get into my team," he sighed with noticeable relief. Seeing how the blonde furies switched all their attention to the only Kunichi in the office, and talked about something with the chicken, leaving him in peace. "If you manage, they are already chunins," Naruto chuckled, causing an indignant cry from most of the Janins. Still, everyone who was present here hoped to get at least one of the Uzumaki into their team, since the girls were trained. And there was no need to teach them, which means more free time, opportunities to take the world. A higher rank, which meant a significant replenishment of the pocket of future sensei. Naruto, your team is number 7. Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Taiyo, and Haruno Sakura drew attention to themselves and Ruka, consulting his list, which was in his hands. The blond man nodded, confirming the correctness of the teacher's words. Since everyone is already here, I'm going to announce the lists to the children. Iruka, please announce my team first, Naruto asked. Umino thought about it. But paying attention to the twins who started pestering other Janins, he nodded. They both went to class. However, the blonde tops immediately rushed after my father. So, children, now I'm going to announce the lists of teams. The hand started from the threshold as soon as I opened the door. Naruto followed him in, attracting the surprised glances of the entire audience. Aki and Yuki also received their attention, smiling fervently at all the students. To begin with, team number 7. Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Taiyo, and Haruno Sakura. Janine mentor Uzumaki Naruto. Her? Naruto, why aren't we on your team? Mito shouted from somewhere in the back rows. Because from today you are Chunins, and team number 15, Jinchuriki explained, getting 3 vests printed on his wrist, which a second later were already in the hands of Uzumaki. Thank you. The redheads took turns kissing the blonde on the cheek, and Karina brazenly kissed him on the lips. This performance, as well as the news that their peer is already Janine, caused a flurry of conversations and dissatisfied exclamations among the students. Iruka-sensei, why is it Naruto Janine? Someone shouted from the back desks. This is Hokage's decision. Sarutobi herself believed that Naruto's skills were enough to receive this title. Yumina calmly replied, but the conversations and questions did not end there. And why then are we Genins, Akashina Karen, and Mito Chunins? Kiba shouted. In order to become a Chunin, you have to pass an exam. There are no problems with this at all, Uzumaki answered for the teacher. Go to the head of your clan, and if he decides that you are strong enough for this title, and ready to bear the responsibility imposed with its receipt, then he petitions the Hokage for an early exam for you. And what should clanless children do? Sakura asked. Here you need a request from your parents or a person teaching you, Naruto replied, behind whom his daughters were still standing. And if no one teaches me? Haruno persisted. Then what can we talk about the rank of Chunin, if there is no one to train you to the level required to obtain this title? Uzumaki asked coldly, looking around the Genins with a heavy gaze, which caused the class to immediately fall silent. Okay, teams 7 and 15 follow me, the blond man commanded. And, taking the hands of the already bored little ones, he left. The named teams followed him, finding themselves in an empty corridor. The young man stopped the whole Arava. So, Kashina, you are appointed the main one in the team, while there is no me, or another captain appointed by Hokage. After the girl nodded, he handed her the twins. There are no free missions for today. Bye, Dad. The blondes shouted before disappearing into the white haze of the moving technique. After all Uzumaki, except for Taui, disappeared, Naruto called the team on the roof. There, sitting on the railing, he examined the Genins assigned to his command by Hokage, who perched on the concrete steps in front of him. So, let's get acquainted again. Tell us your name, what you love, and what you don't, hobbies, dreams, briefly. About skills, suggested Jinchuriki. Show an example, Sakura demanded in an impudent tone, showing her dislike and unwillingness to be under the command of a blonde. Thinking that her commanders would support her, because the blonde became a Janine quite recently, and, in her opinion, for beautiful eyes. Well, my name is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, the head of these 2 clans. Janine is 14 years old. I love my family, I don't even know. Hobbies are reading books and spending time with my daughters. There is no dream. The blond man sighed, looking at the students, then pointed to Haruno. Let's start with you. Haruno Sakura, 13 years old, Genin. I'm not going to tell you what I like and don't like. A hobby and a dream, too. Pink smirked, thinking that she appeared to Sasuke at least cool. Uzumaki Taiyo is 14 years old, Genin. I love my friends and sisters. I don't like you, Naruto-sensei, because you are a pervert. On such a statement, Uchiha and Haruno amicably bulged their eyes, and the blonde himself did not even move his ear. Sakura was doubly surprised. Even though Taiyo said to her face that she didn't like Naruto, she did it politely. Although she proved herself in the class, like all Uzumaki from the position. He said something. Navglas. There are no dreams, as well as hobbies. Futon. Uchiha Sasuke is 13 years old. Genin. I love my family and my brother. I don't like smug and arrogant people with a lack of subordination. The dream of becoming a strong ninja, hobby no. Elements. Kato can use to techniques and Raiten, but I don't know the techniques of this element yet. What are you doing to her? Haruno jumped up from his seat. He's not better or stronger than us. You really think he's going to teach us something? And you treat him like he's a hacker himself. Sakura Naruto-sensei is a very strong ninja, and he is much smarter. All of them put together, Uchiha stood up for Uzumaki. He can't finish this off, he's just an upstart. Pink retorted, not noticing the heavy sigh from Uchiha. What do you know, you fool? I jumped up already to defend my sensei, going to do something else. But she was interrupted. Calmed down. A single word from Naruto, and the trio instantly froze. Something in his voice made me afraid, and a herd of arctic goosebumps walked along the backs of the young genins. My body was numb. Intuition screamed, straining, warning children of danger. A powerful chakra emanated from Uzumaki, pressing him to the ground. The girls sat down in the blink of an eye and calmed down. The blonde continued in the same voice. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. at the 7th training ground. Don't eat since the evening, otherwise it will be bad. I see. Yes, the genins squeaked at the same time, and the blonde disappeared. Yes, I never even thought that he could be like that. Uchiha thought about it, choosing the right words to describe his feelings about the actions of the captain of their team. Impressive, or what? Is he like this at home too? Sakura asked, turning to Uzumaki. No, she shook her head negatively, thoughtfully looking somewhere to the side. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen him like this. At home, he is always kind, although he has little emotional. You won't understand the Erysipelas right away, but I feel such a powerful chakra for the first time. Okay, see you tomorrow, Uchiha said, getting up from his seat, after which the others followed his example. The blonde man got home in the evening, just in time for dinner, because he had to stay late at a meeting of the Janins. Everything was as usual at the table. The girls were talking about something. Small Uzumaki destroyed everything they could reach, and, having eaten enough, disappeared into their room. Naruto jumped to conclusions. There were still changes. Taiyu looked at the blonde man strangely. No, she used to look at him as an enemy of the people too, but now there was something else in her gaze. A certain interest in him, as if she was studying him. After dinner, the young head of the two clans took a shower and lay down on the bed. Tomorrow he had to get up early, so he needed to sleep, but the young man's plan was not destined to come true. After 20 minutes, he felt the presence of a person next to him. Deciding not to do anything, the blonde successfully continued to sleep. He was well aware that no outsider would enter the clan's territory, the house, and even more so his room. Suddenly, the blonde man felt that the guest was not alone. There were 3 people in the room besides himself. Since he can completely hide the chakra, only with the help of funjutsu, Uzumaki has already understood who came to him. Naruto was lying on his back, and his hands were resting near his body. In general, I slept like a soldier. In the pose of attention. The guests lay down on the bed next to him. To his right, he felt a warm chest pressed against his arm. The same thing happened on the left side. The third guest occupied the space above him, carefully sitting on the belt. By the smell, the blonde determined that Meto was on the right, and Karen was on the left. Kushina is on top, as her long hair fell on his chest when she leaned forward a little. The blonde slept in his underpants, so it was easy to feel that his guests were naked. This has never happened before. The fox commented, clearly stunned by what was happening. The 3 of us at once. Did they really decide to arrange a holiday for you? What's the occasion of the holiday? Suddenly the young man spoke, voicing the version of a friend, forcing the girls to freeze for a second. Promotion. A voice spoke softly from above. Naruto grunted, and summoned two clones. "Dad, Mom, get up." The blond man opened his eyes. The sun had long since risen, and the body was numb, as three girls were lying on it in different poses. There was a strange smell and noise coming from the kitchen. "Yeah, I didn't get enough sleep." "Absolutely. Pow up." "I'm coming," Uzumaki voted in response, so that he could be heard, rising on his elbows. "Is it morning already?" Karen mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "What's that smell?" Mito jumped up. "It looks like Aki and Yuki are cooking breakfast," Kashina replied, also sitting on the bed. A minute later, the meaning of the words uttered by the girl reached all the sleepy Uzumaki sitting in bed. "Stop." All the girls rushed to the kitchen, getting dressed on the way, while not even bothering with whose clothes exactly. Well, at least Naruto's things are not on themselves. The blond man followed them, not forgetting why he had a seal on his shoulder. After feeding the chakra there, he found himself in his usual clothes. Janina's vest over a mesh t-shirt, and black wide-leg trousers. The shoes were in the hallway, and he decided not to call them on himself yet. Going down to the first floor, he saw a table set with a strange-looking breakfast. All Uzumaki were already sitting and tasting the food. Naruto sat down in a chair and also started eating breakfast. It turned out to be not very edible, sometimes oversalted or undersalted. Otherwise, they cooked normally, but they mixed the ingredients the wrong way. The blondes looked at everyone very carefully, and with obvious alarm, which was noticed by the head of the clan. "Delicious," he calmly assured the girls. Also, taking an example from Naruto, their mothers praised them. "It's really delicious." "Hopefully," Aki asked. Yes, the blonde had already finished, and was drinking tea. Looking at his watch, he just chuckled. "I slept more than usual, but I was even more tired." "What did you want?" "You have to pay for the pleasure." He gave out a clever thought to the tailed one. "Yours will devour you without bread. You're 4 hours late." When Taya left, the blonde turned to Yuka, who was sitting next to him. "Mum, I don't know, we were still asleep," Aki answered for her sister, as she was chewing her food. "So she went there on time." "What are you going to do?" the fox asked. "I'm not in the mood," the blonde replied. "Ooh, it's going to hurt them." Biju chuckled. "Okay, I'm off. Thanks for breakfast." "Bye, Dad." Yuki shouted. Aki just waved her hand like the others. Chapter 9. The morning for Naruto did not work out from the very beginning. "I didn't get enough sleep, and I was tired like a dog." Of course, it's nice when they cook for you, and even your daughters, but the stomach had its own opinion on this. The young man walked slowly to the training ground. There was no hurry, however, and I was a good 4 hours late. We met Naruto at the training ground with 3 angry looks. "Yeah, Naruto, you're late." Sakura shouted angrily. "What are you doing?" Tai echoed her, duplicating the pink-haired tone. "Naruto, why did you call us here at all at such an early hour?" Sasuke was a little restrained, but still angrily held the command. "And he was too late." Haruno jumped up. The mood of the young Jinchuriki fell even lower, threatening to sink too. "I hate all living things." "Be silent," Janine said softly, and everyone obediently shut up, looking at the blonde in surprise. Naruto was frowning like a rain cloud, but neither his face nor his eyes betrayed a single emotion, which was very frightening for genins. Taking out 2 iron bolts on separate ropes, and attached one to his belt from different sides, the young man said, "You have to take these bolts from me in an hour," he calmly continued in an emotionless voice. "If you fail, you will go back to the academy. You have 1 hour. Who will remain at the end of the term, without a bolt, will automatically go to the academy. You can use any methods. Your goal is to kill me." Questions. "I'm eating." The suspended trio of genins gave out, pondering what was said. "But it's not enough for everyone," Sasuke remarked, pointing to the 2 bolts. "Yes, one of you will go back." Naruto calmly shrugged his shoulders, making it clear with all his appearance that he didn't care. "But how so?" Sakura screamed. "After all, there are 3 genins in the team, not 2. Of all the genins of this release, only a part will become teams. Most of them will be eliminated, Uzumaki explained, while his students turned pale. The remaining ones will form a real team. Any more questions? No. Well, then let's get started. Genie did not disappear into the bushes. Naruto continued to stand still. Sasuke disappeared into the tree behind Uzumaki. Sakura is behind the first bushes on the right. Taya went around so as to attack from the left. Sakura appeared first. She threw a few shurikens at the blonde and ran at him. From the shurikens, the team captain stepped aside, letting them pass by him without even straining. Then the girl tried to try her luck in taijutsu, running at the blonde in the open. But as soon as she approached and wanted to hit the young man with a kunai, the world abruptly turned upside down. She turned out to be lying on the ground with her belly up, and a blonde man hovered over her. She expected him to say something to the type, "You lost," but no. He slowly swung the kunai, deciding to check what Kuno's teammates would do. As Naruto expected, they didn't let him kill the girl. A couple of shurikens from different sides flew right at him. With a decent speed for genins, I had to jump a good 10 meters away from my victim. As soon as he touched the ground, he saw two of her teammates appear in front of the lying girl. The guys took a defensive stance. "You fool! Why did you climb? Now we have to fight in the open," scolded the girl to Tai, barely restraining the desire. "Put on pink-haired, more colorful and obscene epithets." Sasuke stood and peered at Naruto. It was only now that Haruno realized how stupid she had acted. The opportunity to attack unexpectedly and take Sensei by surprise was so easily lost. "Sorry," the girl got up and grabbed the kunai, which fell out of her hand and was lying on the ground. The three of them looked at the blonde man, who did not take any action. "Sasuke is a fireball," she whispered to Tai. Before that she covered her mouth with her hand so that Uzumaki could not read her lips. Uchiha nodded and began to fold the seals, and the girl did the same. "Kato. A fireball," the brunette shouted, releasing a fiery stream from his mouth. Turned into a ball that flew into Naruto. "Futon. A breath of wind," shouted Uzumaki, releasing a strong stream of air from her mouth after the fireball. Why did he increase in size and fly too fast so that the shinobi level could dodge him? However, the blonde did not belong to them, but he was not going to make any attempts to defend himself or get away from the flight path of the equipment. The ball hit the target, and Sensei disappeared in a white haze. "A clone. And where is the real one?" Sakura asked in surprise. Then an eerily cold voice sounded behind Razvalasoi. She did not have time to turn around, a blow to the neck, and she fell to the ground. Uzumaki and Uchiha already wanted to rush at Naruto, but they were prevented by the kunai thrown by him. Almost made holes in the students' chests. But they managed to bounce back. And immediately hid in the forest thicket. "Damn, Sakura, he's got it. What are we going to do?" Uchiha asked, watching as the blonde tied the unconscious Haruno to one of the pillars. "Act without her," Uzumaki replied, earning a strange look from Uchiha. "That too will pass anyway." "And that's right," the brunette agreed. "He didn't want to go to the academy at all. I have some ideas." "Yeah, listen." Naruto sat and watched what the remaining genini would do. Sasuke's chakra was felt behind him. He walked around the perimeter of the clearing. Teo remained in her place. But now it's stirring. The girl came out into the clearing with a flute in her hands. "Naruto-sensei, I'll play for you. Do you mind?" the red-headed woman asked maliciously. The blonde did not answer, continuing to stand in the middle of the clearing and look at her. "So you don't mind?" Uzumaki started playing a beautiful melody. The blonde man was wary. It's a strange feeling. At one point, he realized that he was almost caught in genjutsu. The seal on his left wrist began to burn. The blonde changed the flow of chakra in his head, and the illusion subsided. Just in time, Uchiha flew at him from behind with the intention of hitting him in the head. "Don't underestimate me," the blonde man said calmly. Instantly turning around, he intercepted the guy's hand, which he was going to hit with his left hand. But the right one struck a strong blow to the chest of the brunette, knocking all the air out of his lungs. Sasuke fell to the ground, trying to breathe, and as soon as he managed to do it, The blonde struck a chopping blow with the edge of his palm, knocking out the brunette. We were left alone, the blonde man said calmly. Uzumaki was confused for a second, but there was nothing she could do. A kunai flew at her, which she dodged by simply tilting her head. Returning her gaze to the blonde, she did not find him. Looking around, she couldn't find him anywhere. My heart was pounding faster from the guess. She didn't hear Naruto's thrown kunai hit the tree that was right behind her. In confirmation of the thought, she felt a blow on her neck and fell into darkness. At the same time, in Hokage's office, 3 people were watching the test of team number 7 through a small crystal ball. Namely the owner of the office Sarutobi Hiruzen, Haddock Kakashi, and Morina Ibiki. Hokage-sama, I still don't understand why you gave him the title of Janina. Morina began as soon as the blonde man in the ball tied all his students to the poles. Yes, he is strong, but why not Chunin to begin with, but Janine right away? Ibiki, Kakashi began. Naruto is a seal master from the Uzumaki clan. And what? We also have enough printing masters, but they don't get Janins right away, the interrogation master reminded. You didn't catch the essence of Kakashi's words. People like him can seal anything, starting with enemy shuriken and equipment. And ending with tailed beasts, Sarutobi shook his head. By the way, he does not pass long in the rank of Janina, do not worry. What do you mean, Hokage-sama? Haddock asked. The time will come, you will find out, the old man smiled slyly. Polygon number 7. The blonde man was sitting in the shade of a tree and thinking about his life. His disciples were hanging peacefully, tied to the pillars, seemingly not going to wake up. For some reason, the blonde remembered a conversation that happened tonight. Flashback, Naruto was lying in his bed. Mito was lying on his chest. The same situation was now with his clones, who were lying next to him. Kushina and Karen also perched on them. Everyone was completely naked, but they were not at all ashamed of their nails. The blonde man thought about what he should do next thoughtfully, stroking the girl's thigh. She, in turn, drew simple patterns on the guy's chest with her finger. Not that, he suddenly spoke up. What? The girl responded lazily. Why do you love me? From such a question, she raised her head in surprise and looked at him. Like Karen and Kushina. The clones didn't react in any way, but they listened attentively. After all, they were copies of the blonde, and thought the same way as he did. What kind of question is that? Karen was wary. We love, and that's it. I'm not talking about that, the blonde glanced at the bedside table. 3 o'clock in the morning is the time to have a heart-to-heart talk. Why me? I'm different from the other guys in some way. I don't understand at all. Each of you I offered to terminate that contract, but you refused, doubting that the reason for the restoration of the clan. Why? Kushina asked. Uzumaki genes are too strong, even if you repeatedly mix them with ordinary non-clan people, the genes will not go anywhere. And the child will still get only the best of the parents' genes. Naruto was answered by his clone, which, by the way, housed the red-headed one who asked the question. Well, it's hard to answer, Mito replied, sitting up in bed in front of the blonde. Try, it's important to me, the blonde man calmly asked. Well, look, let's start from afar, Uzumaki began. When we were growing up in the orphanage, we, like all girls, dreamed of a prince on a white horse, a brave and fearless handsome man. So that he would carry us in his arms, love us, take care of us, take care of us. Then we moved to Konoha. While studying with other children, we noticed that ordinary guys are not like you at all. In what way? The blonde man asked the question. They are irresponsible and just plain stupid. And just ordinary, Mito replied, shrugging her shoulders at the same time. I was different from them in some way. Jinchuriki asked, looking intently at the girl. Yes, compared to them, you are a completely different person. We admired you. You have always taken responsibility for yourself and your words, as well as for us, Mito replied quietly, looking in front of her with a thoughtful look. You are a real leader, for whom you can go to the end of the world. Karen took the floor. You talk like an adult, you talk like an adult. You protect us from dangers, while being the same teenager as we are. You were the father we never had. At the same time, you didn't limit us, we could do anything. And when something went wrong, it was safe to run to you for help. And to be sure that you will help, no matter what it costs you, Kashina said, as well as Karen, taking a sitting position. No matter what happened, we always knew we had you. And it was very pleasant. Next to you, you feel protected. You have become the prince we dreamed of as a child. Mito smiled a little and looked at the ceiling, continuing. Then we grew up, and a new feeling appeared. A strange feeling, causing as a hook reaction of embarrassment. When I saw you, my heart started beating faster. I really wanted to do something for you. When you were tired after training, I wanted to put you on my lap and just let you rest. Or cook something delicious for you, then we decided to share these feelings with each other. After sitting and thinking, we decided that it was something like gratitude. But very soon they realized that this was not the case. Kashina sat down closer to the blonde and leaned her head on his shoulder. Continued to talk. Then you started teaching us how to cook. When we saw you eating our food, it became very joyful in our soul. You praised us, said it was delicious. Although we knew perfectly well that hardly anything edible came out, for some reason, after your praise, a piece of pride rose in my soul. We tried to do everything as best as possible. They wanted you to see how much we value you. Now Karina has settled down next to the blonde. And then, closer to the age of 13, there was an understanding of their own emotions. And the simple realization that you have won the heart of each of us. Just being around and being yourself, you attracted even more against the background of guys who were making faces. And trying to pretend to be the coolest, while not even being able to answer for their own words. And hiding from difficulties behind their backs. Parents or clans. Well, somehow, Mito finished, looking at the blonde with a slightly reddened face. Clearly. Thank you, the blonde smiled gently. Order has finally settled in the soul, a sense of rightness and necessity of what has been happening to him lately. There was no longer a feeling that something was wrong. We were talking about something, Kashina suddenly said. And really, as if casually, Karen threw. Well, then I suggest we continue. Meto confidently moved in the direction of the blonde, moving around the bed on all fours. When she got close, she kissed him. But I have to get up early, Naruto thought sadly when the girl pulled away from him and perched on top. And what will you refuse them? The sleepy fox asked. No, of course not, the blonde man chuckled, noticing that the clones, who had been sitting quietly up to that moment, also went about their business, trying to give the girl as much pleasure as possible. Naruto, taking Meto by the hips, and lifted him above his dignity, then slowly lowered him with pleasure, listening to a quiet moan next to his ear. The night was long and very pleasant, and full of vivid memories. Naruto's end flashback was pulled out of his memories by the fuss of his students. They had already come to their senses, and were now twitching, trying to break free from the strong ropes. As soon as they noticed that the teacher was coming to them, they immediately quieted down, looking at him. Shinsei, what about the assignment? Which one of us passed? Sakura asked in a trembling voice. I have news for you. I will not send any of your team to the academy as usual, but now Uzumaki said without cold notes. Really? So we've all passed. I was glad to see Tai. Sasuke just nodded in agreement. No, the smile instantly flew off the genins' faces. The blonde turned around and began to leave the landfill, before throwing a couple of kunai in a rope to free the genins. You're hopeless. I am submitting a report that you are excluded from the training program completely. You won't make a decent ninja. Chapter 10. The blonde Uzumaki was walking towards the exit from the landfill, intending to go to the Hokage residence. Enjoy a warm day and immerse yourself in pleasant memories, and the past nights were not allowed by 3 screaming creatures that did not lag behind the guy a step. Naruto-sensei, how so? Sakura screamed in a voice not her own, almost forcing the blonde to weigh her bream, so that she bit her tongue. Naruto-sensei repeated to Taya over and over again, while trying not to raise her voice and keep herself in control. But it didn't always work out. You can't. Naruto-sensei groomed Sasuke, for whom such an outcome of the exam was a blow below the belt and a disgrace on his head, which he definitely did not want to allow. Give us a second chance. The blonde, up to a certain point, did not pay any attention to them at all. No attention suddenly stopped and looked over his shoulder at the also frozen teenagers. But it was so only at first glance. A second chance. The young man turned on his heels, carefully peering into the forest behind the backs of the frozen three students. The sense of approaching danger was alarming. Then listen to my commands. I'm going to take you as a censor, find all the people within a radius of 2 kilometers, and take them away from here as quickly as possible. I understand, the girl briefly threw, closing her eyes and folding a special seal, which Karen, who was also a censor, taught her. Sasuke, you run to Hokage and tell him that we have a cat situation. 7. Uzumaki continued to peer into the shadows and crowns of trees. Sakura, you fly to my house, and you say the same thing to Karen, Kushina, Mito. Naruto-sensei, 3 Kanahamaru, Mogi. Juden, 900 meters towards the village, Uzumaki said, opening her eyes. All right, after you follow the order, go home. Go ahead. The captain commanded. Genie did not run away. Everyone was puzzled by the teacher's behavior, but to argue and ask a question. He was in no hurry, he was too tense. As soon as the landfill was free of unnecessary witnesses, a man came out into the clearing. A black cloak with red clouds, strange eyes, red hair, all visible parts of the body, are studded with strange glands. Pain calmly said the blonde, finally calming down, because the enemy became known. Naruto Uzumaki replied with a red-haired one. You, as I understand it, are for the QB. Jinchuriki inquired, dispersing the chakra in his body. You know the answer, the shinobi replied. Yes, the young man instantly folded 5 seals. Futon. Karatsui. A thin stream of compressed air burst from the blonde's hand, knocking down a dozen trees. In the place where the head of the Akatsuki was a moment ago, the blonde man took off and ran away from the village at high speed, knowing for sure that the enemy would follow him. Running away. A voice sounded from behind. Turning around, Uzumaki saw 6 red-haired people with identical eyes. A renegade is a dangerous thing. Get away to use techniques, Jinchuriki thought, speeding up. However, the opponents did not lag behind, but they did not attack either. Taking Uzumaki away from the village for pain meant that he would have more time before the appearance of help for the blonde. Where do you start? The excited voice of a fox, hermit mode or Biju sounded. All together, in the tone of his Bij, Jinchuriki replied. At high speed, the leaf ninja and his pursuers jumped out into a large clearing, with a waterfall decorated with 2 statues. Then the blonde man stopped. He froze expectantly, looking at his enemy. Valley of Completion, Katsuki chuckled. Symbolic? I think so. The blonde was collecting senchakra, while the redhead was suffering from an attack of philosophy. This is where it all started, this is where it will end, said one of the puppets. To understand that these dolls were helped by the hermit mode, which is about to be fully formed. Thus began the story between Uchiha Madara and Hashirama Senju. I think it's a great place for the last battle. Yes, I agree with that. The blonde man took a deep breath. Uzumaki's opponent noticed orange circles around his eyes. Yes, it's a serious mistake to give the enemy a trump card, because the renegade does not see senchakra. Unless it's close, and it's about 7 meters, but the blonde was standing on the other side of the waterfall. 30-35 meters from him. However, the advantage in strength remained on the side of the redhead, so he did not have to worry. But what Jinchuriki used next did not like the Akatsuki leader at all. Naruto lit up with yellow fire. A cloak of chakra appeared on him. Black patterns began to appear all over the body, and the orange marks of the hermit mode turned black. Behind him, of their own volition, glowing softly yellow, 9 tails were moving. Well, the fight will be interesting, the main pain said, and all the puppets took their fighting positions. Let's get started. The blonde asked, disappearing and appearing already near the opponent. The battle began. I'm going to dream. I ran to the training ground with my former classmate. They seemed to have only an acquaintance. Wow! And I thought only Naruto, or rather, Naruto-sensei, does not suffer from punctuality. Janine's a strange one. The mask is on my face, and my left eye is closed, only white hair sticks out, and one eye looks at me in surprise. I gave it away, not knowing how to address this Janine. Kakashi Haddock came to the aid of an unknown person to me. The eye. Uzumaki is melting, I introduced myself, yet Meto knows how to drive such things into his head. Naruto-sensei gave me the task to take you to the village. It's clear what kind of cat. Did he just take and listen to yesterday's graduate of the academy, or is it because of Naruto? Okay, stop. I'll think about it later. The cat. I definitely remembered. 7, I replied, watching with surprise, as Janine's single I increased a couple of times. Quickly to the village. He barked to his students and disappeared into a white haze. The guys stared at me in shock. Well, did you run? I had to call out to the Genins so that they started moving. As soon as we started running towards the village, we were overtaken by the terrible roar of an explosion. And half a minute later, a very strong wave of air rolled up to us, from which we almost flew into the sky. Then came the terrible chakra, and I recognized it. Naruto-sensei. The end of the POF. Haddock was rushing across the rooftops to the Hokage residence. Code 7 is definitely not a joke. Naruto definitely wouldn't joke about such things for the sake of checking his team. This code implied an attack by the population of a particularly dangerous shinobi, a group of shinobi or biju. Finally reaching Janine's destination, he jumped through the open window. Hokage-sama. 2 voices sounded in the office. The voice of Kakashi himself, and, as it turned out, that of Sneezy Sasuke, who, simultaneously with the arrival of the first one, broke into the door through the window. I have important news, Janine politely pointed to the exit of Sneezy. I also have, with a broken breath, Genin replied, drilling Haddock with his eyes. Hokage-sama, the cat sen. Both of them barked, then looked at each other in surprise. If this is a joke, it's not funny, the old man who watched this little performance was worried. But as soon as he finished speaking, a few kilometers from the village, a powerful explosion was heard. Sasuke is free. Kakashi collects Janins. Sakura managed to get to the estate of the Uzumaki clan, and, having thoroughly driven with her feet through the doors, began to wait. The door was opened by Meto, blonde heads were standing behind her, and a girl with red hair about 20 years old looked out of the kitchen with interest. Sakura, is something wrong? Uzumaki asked. Following the entire Arava and the guest, Karen and Kushina also looked out. Naruto-sensei. The pink-haired one began, but the roar and the strong wind that covered the whole village did not let her finish. Tora-chan, Sakura, sit with the twins, we won't be long, the girls shouted and rushed towards the explosion, not giving the babysitters a chance to answer. They jumped out onto the roof, and a white haze enveloped them. Then they went in ninja gear, and not in home clothes. The Valley of Completion has suffered greatly. There was nothing left of the statue, the clearing itself turned into a crater. Trees within a radius of 100 meters were felled. 2 shinobi were flying around the crater, which was gradually filling with water. A few scraps from the other 5 panes were scattered all over the area. Naruto put down one puppet with the first attack, moving behind the back of all the dolls. He did it at a tremendous speed, enough that the redheads did not have time to react because of the surprise. And he did not lose. The doll that stood farthest from him, and covered by the others, was either a healer or a long-distance fighter. That the second was unprofitable for Janine List, and he decided to start with her. Then the young man decided to eliminate the doll that absorbed the chakra. Knowledge of the basics of Shinjutsu, and the principle suggested to the teachers of this discipline, as expected, worked. From the first time, no one managed to curb the chakra of nature, and the doll became petrified. After the blonde stuffed her with ninjutsu based on Sanchakra. Then I had to compete in the number of limbs erased red. He had 6 arms, which is good of course, but only if your enemy does not use 9 tails that change shape and length. The 4th doll called the animals, from which they had to jump high up. As soon as the blonde was on top, A lot of rockets flew at him, and the hand of the fifth doll. It was necessary to cover the opponents with a bijudama, which led to the formation of a huge crater on the side of the valley. The result is 2 multiplied by 0 of the enemy. They don't even have any scraps left. The latter, as it turned out, was able to push and attract objects and living beings to himself. When he decided to pull Uzumaki to him, he did not lose his head and put all 9 tails in front of him, which resembled more needles. In order not to run into them, Ginger threw the blonde with great force. Uzumaki, quickly realizing, stopped, using 2 tails as supports from behind, and 2 more as anchors. The rest of the tails were beaten off by metal pins. Pain did not dare to try his luck in taijutsu, as he was much inferior in speed to the opponent. The eyes kept up with Naruto, but there is no body. The chakra ended both in the leader of the Akatsuki and in the shinobi of the leaf. It's time for the final blow. Chewbacca Tensei Pain put his hands together, and a black ball began to form there. Naruto, go ahead, don't let him finish this topic. The fox barked excitedly. Demon Lord mode. The blond man said in a barely audible voice, and began to form a black ball that shone blood red. The chakra covering the body changed color to gray blood red. Horns grew, the white of the eye turned black, and looked creepy with a cross pupil. The shell is rushing. Everything within a radius of several kilometers was covered by a huge explosion. Several tens of hectares of forest were carried away by the shock wave. Your leg was whistled by the blonde, returning to the battlefield with the flight of the thunder god, with which he got out of there. Yeah. The fox muttered in amazement. And what can I expect from mixing my 3 modes at once? Uzumaki chuckled, not dispelling any of the 3 modes in which he was now. Okay, let's go to the present. Finding Akatsuki wasn't a problem. His chakra felt very strong after the last attack. He was at a great distance from Konoha for a day and a half of travel. And if we take into account the abilities of the head of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan, then 5 minutes of running at supersonic speed. Then it's a small matter to kill the woman protecting the real Pain, then tear out the eyes and finish off the disabled person himself. Kurama, I have a request for you, Naruto began. And I know perfectly well which one, the fox sighed heavily. Come on, lie down. The blond man lay down right on the ground, dispelling the hermit mode and the demon lord mode. The body needed rest after such loads, and it was necessary to let the Biju tails do their job. After that, it was possible to return to the village, fall asleep. For 30 hours, for example. The blonde was brought out of his slumber by the grumbling of Kurama, who castrated his Jinchuriki in all sorts of ways, promising him heavenly punishment if he did not wake up. Sighing heavily, and assuming a sitting position, Naruto looked at the world around him with his new eyes. The amount of information made my head buzz unpleasantly, but gradually the buzz faded away. Having collected the son of Chakra, the blonde quickly came to his senses. After getting to his feet and examining himself, and summoning a new form of Janine from the press, he headed towards the sheet. With a decent speed. Planning to get to it before sunset. The upper paths, with a speed exceeding the capabilities of most living shinobi Uzumaki, moved towards Konoha, easily bypassing the Anbu patrols and sensor teams. Fortunately, the hermit mode and Rinnegan allowed to detect those long before it was done. He overcame the protective wall of Konoha a few minutes before the sun disappeared below the horizon, first of all going to Hokage, while not forgetting to hide his purchase with the help of seals, to report that everything was fine with him, and the enemy is destroyed. Hiruzen listened to his short report on what had happened, and sent him to rest, ordering him to come with a detailed report. In 3 days. They were waiting for him in the house, none of its inhabitants slept. As soon as he moved to the porch of the house, Karen rushed to his neck. The twins ran out after her. And then Meto and Kushina joined. It took a few minutes for the young man to calm them down, which he managed with difficulty. Because the trio saw the consequences of his fight with Pain's puppets. And only after personally making sure that everything was fine with him, the girls let him go. And where is Tue? Naruto asked, noticing that she did not appear even when everyone sat down at the table, and the girls began to feed him. My sister is sleeping. She was very scared for her dad, because of what her moms put her to sleep, Yuki replied. looking up from the ice cream. Clearly, the blond man frowned, sitting in silence for the rest of the evening, only occasionally answering questions. And then, he went to his room at all, citing fatigue after the fight. Having moved to the roof of the house, he silently sat down on the edge of the roof, next to Tayu, who was wrapped in a warm home sweater. The red-haired woman did not react to his appearance in any way. Her frozen gaze was fixed on Mount Hokage. She came to her senses only when he gently pressed her to him. She tried to escape from his strong embrace for a few seconds out of surprise. But as soon as the girl realized who exactly was hugging her, she calmed down and snuggled closer to him. "It's all right, I'm melting, I'm safe and sound. It is not necessary to shed tears in vain." Stroking the red-haired woman on the back, Naruto quietly calmed her. Thanks to his Biju for being able to feel other people's emotions as soon as he entered Biju mode, even if he didn't understand. The girl did not respond to his words, only hugged the blonde even tighter, burying her face in his chest. After a few minutes, she stopped sobbing, her breathing steadied, and she fell into a healthy sleep. All fear for Naruto and worries disappeared from her emotions. Taking her in his arms, Jinchuriki moved Harishin to the door of Tao's room, laying her on the bed, covering her with a blanket. He looked at the sleeping woman for several minutes. Then, shaking his head, he moved to his room, and, after taking a shower, fell asleep, deciding to postpone the trial with problems for later. Chapter 11, Naruto, Morning is Never Good. Uzumaki woke up to the fact that he was called in 6 voices from the first floor. Getting out of bed, he dressed and with his hair disheveled to the point of impossibility trudged downstairs. A lot of people were waiting for him there. An old man with gray hair and a medium-length beard. A guy about 24 years old with shoulder-length red hair, neatly combed to the left side with purple eyes. And the blonde girl looked 20 years old. Her hair almost touched the floor, and her golden eyes sparkled with life. A couple, judging by the fact that they were sitting next to each other and holding hands with gold rings on them. It was possible to assume that they were newlyweds. But the old man's gaze towards the girl was a little alarming, as if he did not approve of her presence. A young girl was also present, 18-20 years old. Red curly hair and a kind look, the same as the old man's black eyes. The whole company was reimbursed on one sofa, but a familiar company was sitting on the second one. Kushina, Mito, and Karen. They were sitting on the sofa itself, holding little blondes in their arms. The daughters who were looking at the guests, and now turned their attention to their father. Tue was sitting on the arm of a chair that stood near the sofas. Naruto sat down in his rightful place, which is why Uzumaki did not keep her balance from the blonde who splashed into the chair. And safely took a place on his lap, desperately redder. She couldn't get up because of the 2 blondes who fit on her lap. The guests reacted to this bunch very positively. The old man smiled, as did the man, and the girls chuckled softly. "Meet me, I decided to take the floor to Tai to diffuse a tense situation just for her. This is the Manumasura family, a close family to the main branch of the clan. I'm Maruma Uzumaki," the old man said, looking at the blonde with an appraising look. "I'm Taki Uzumaki, the son of this grouch." The guy chuckled, nodding at his father, who rewarded him with a light slap on the head for this. "I am Tora Uzumaki, also the daughter of this grumpy." Chuckling softly, the younger sister introduced herself, looking at her father, who blushed a little from anger. "I tire every Uzuma." "Not Uzumaki!" the old man screamed. "I do not approve of this union, as a father and the head of the clan." "We don't need your approval as a father," the man barked back, standing up for his wife. The blonde herself was sitting with her head down, almost crying. "This is an old custom, and there was nothing from it now. It doesn't depend. But I have the power as the head of the clan." In response, the old man shouted, "You will not get married without my permission." Naruto realized that the situation was heating up, and imperceptibly gave a signal to Kushina. She went into the kitchen, taking Thora with her. The twins and Karen Smeto. Taya, enthusiastically watching the argument, did not notice the disappearance of most of the company, and continued to sit on the blonde. Also, she did not notice that she put her arm around him, since it was a little difficult to sit in this position without support. And when the older Uzumaki switched to shouting, then she pressed her side against the guy's chest, hugging her right arm tighter around his neck. Of course, I apologize for interrupting you, Naruto began calmly. The sparring stopped, and everyone looked at the blonde. But why did you, Maruma-san, decide that you are the head of the clan? After the destruction of the whirlpool, and the death of the main branch, I remain the rightful heir to this title. The gray-haired Uzumaki replied with restraint. But this is only if the main branch is left without an heir. I noticed Taya. The old man looked at her blankly. I think I should introduce myself, too, the host took the floor. My name is Uzumaki Namikaze, Naruto. I am the son of Uzumaki Tezuka, the only child in the main branch of the Uzumaki clan. The daughters of the last head of Uzumaki on the Tatter. And the son of Namikaze Minato, the last of the main branch of the Namikaze clan. I am the rightful head of these two clans. There was silence in the room. The old man looked at the floor, thinking about something. Taki looked at the blonde, then at the red-haired woman sitting on him, then at his father. Ashi carefully examined her only relative so far. The gray-haired Uzumaki was about to say something when there was a knock on the door. Tai went to open it, finally noticing in what position she was sitting with the blonde. A gray-haired Janine came into the room with a half-face mask and a left eye covered with a protector. I hope I didn't interrupt Naruto. The guest smiled, awkwardly scratching his head. Something's up, Kakashi. Skipping past the blonde asked a counter-question. Yes, you are being called to the council of the Janins, and the heads of clans. Said of Lacey, and then went back, finally throwing. In 10 minutes, by the way. Okay, I have to go. You can take 2 vacant houses right behind our mansion, Naruto said, getting up from his chair. Why 2? Shini asked, thinking. I think the newlyweds need their nest or not. The blonde man calmly replied, summoning ninja equipment on himself with the help of a seal on his shoulder. Ask Mito for all the information. Yes, thank you, Naruto-sama. The delighted Taka cried out. The girl said nothing, but the joy in her eyes overflowed. Okay, the old man sighed for the first time, looking up from the floor. At first, he did not think that this girl would be able to approach his son, and in every way hindered their relationship. But one day they ran away and returned a month later with rings on their fingers. He was furious at the time that they didn't listen to him. But, getting to know the girl, he began to understand better why his son chose her and was no longer particularly against it. But wounded pride did not allow him to give up his position. And now there is nothing to hold these positions with. Uzumaki put his big palm on the girl's head and tousled her hair, then got up and went to the kitchen, Zatayu. And finally throwing a couple. I want grandchildren. Why is it so urgent? Naruto asked, jumping on the roofs towards the Hokage residence. I have no idea, just as calmly as the blonde, Haddock replied, jumping next to him in the same direction as Uzumaki. When 2 shinobi were nailed to the Great Hall in Mount Hokage, everyone was already beaten there. All the Janini and clan heads. The 3rd Hokage and the village elders were also present. Naruto, you're good. After the destruction of Pain, the Akatsuki broke up. Our intelligence has seen most of its members in different parts of the continent. At the same time, they beat without their famous raincoats. Hiruzen took the floor. He was saying something else, but the blonde man wasn't listening to him. He was thinking. Why did Pain's eyes beat at Chi Madari? Did he really survive then? But what is he after? Why did he give his eyes to this man? Ho! Naruto, are you listening to me? The old man cried out a little angrily. The blonde man came out of his thoughts and looked at Hokage. On Uzumaki, all the eyes in the hall were directed at him. Kurama forced Naruto to speak, addressing the tailed one. The fox looked at his master and chuckled. In short, Suna needs help. You're going there with your team tomorrow. Since you are a master of printing, you will treat a sick shukaku. I understand, I'm going out tomorrow morning. The blonde man sighed. The meeting continued for about an hour, after which everyone dispersed. When he got home, the blonde found Taya in the kitchen. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. near the gate, a mission in the land of wind. Tell Sasuke and Sakura. After receiving a nod from the girl, he went to bed. We need to gain strength. Shukaku is crazy. The night calm over one of the strongest hidden villages of the shinobi world was disturbed by a loud explosion, and the sound of a part of the protective wall of the village falling, after which thousands of people in white masks rushed into the breach. Battles were going on everywhere, the names of techniques, the screams of the dying and knocking were heard. Then on the wounded, the fighters of the village fought to the death, taking several opponents with them to the next world. But the forces were clearly not equal. Naruto, you need to leave. Minato shouted now, when the village hidden in the whirlpool was attacked by unknown ninjas in white masks. We can't handle it. I'm not leaving without you, said a boy of 8 years old, beating off enemy shurikens. Go away. A red-haired girl of 25 years old shouted with steel in her voice, throwing another kunai at an opponent who happened to be nearby. We will detain them. As soon as you reach the shore, throw the kunai, and we will move to you. But the boy tried to object. Quickly, Naruto. The man barked at his son, forcing him to obey and rush up the protective wall of the village, after which he disappeared behind it. At the same time, 3 7-year-old girls ran out from behind a neighboring house to the 2 remaining ninjas. They were scared and didn't know what to do. Minato remembered them well. They were orphans. Their parents died on the battlefields in the last war, leaving them alone. But the girls held on. The 3 of us always kept together. Hey, come here quickly. I called them to the Mikaze. Minato-san, help. A girl with glasses, who was very scared, shouted. Where are your caregivers? Naruto's mother asked the question. They told us to run, and they themselves began to fight with these masked shinobi, rammed long-haired Uzumaki, the calmest girls. Breathing heavily. Clearly, Minato held out, then folded a series of seals and summoned the red toad. Get into her mouth, she will move you outside the village. But what about you? The third girl screamed, shuddering from another strong explosion. We're going to follow you now, Namikaze smiled reassuringly. The children, obeying, went into the open mouth of the frog, and she, slamming her mouth, jumped over the wall. Right into the cold water of the sea that surrounded the island on which the village was located. A blonde-haired boy was running through the water at high speed. There was only nothing left to the shore. There were almost no explosions behind them. Suddenly, feeling the familiar chakra, the blonde looked down and saw a red frog that was overtaking him, swimming underwater. Jumping to the shore, Uzumaki saw 3 red-haired girls coming out of the frog's mouth. Instantly realizing, he threw a kun from the seal of the thunder god into the nearest tree and began to observe the island, over which various techniques and flashes of explosions were constantly visible. Part of the wall surrounding the village has fallen. The girls also joined his observation, flinching from each explosion that reached the shore. Suddenly, shinobi began jumping out of the trees above the children's heads. Right on the water. They didn't even look at the children as they headed towards the village on the island. Naruto noticed Konoha's protectors out of the corner of his eye. Allies flashed through his mind. There was a terrible explosion on the island, and after it another series of large and no less terrible explosions. A second later, a large crater formed in place of the village, which smoked, hiding behind a view of the destroyed settlement. How so? The stunned blonde man muttered. All the newly arrived ninjas stopped, looking at all this, not knowing what to do. Uzumaki looked at the kunai, which was also hanging alone, with its tip stuck into the tree. They didn't have time, the boy's thought flashed. In confirmation, there was a pop from behind, the frog was gone. The blonde man instantly folded the seals and summoned the old toad. Scroll the contract quickly. The blonde man shouted at him. Everyone nearby looked at him. The toad nodded and, folding the seals, summoned a scroll. The boy snatched out a huge scroll and jerked it open. The blonde man quickly found what he was looking for and froze. The name is crossed out. Naruto fell to his knees, dropping the scroll to the ground. The old toad just shook his head, looking at the boy with pity. Naruto, where is Minato? An old man with a big black pole asked. Naruto knew this man when he walked with his father at the end. He personally met Hiruzen Sarutobi, the acting hokage of the village, hidden in the foliage. Naruto didn't answer, and the old man looked at the scroll. Jiraiya? Hint Ziminate. Naruto Uzumaki. Crossed out, the third one said to himself, I remember that if the name is crossed out, then the contract is broken. Or its owner is dead. Go check, maybe someone survived. The girls looked at their former village in shock. Janina and Anbu ran across the water to the wreckage of a previously great and strong village. Dog Cat Rat called the old man, and instantly 3 Anbu appeared near him. Escort them to our village. The old toad disappeared with the scroll. Naruto, having risen, trudged after Anbu on the machine, despite where and why he was being led. Right now, all his thoughts were about one thing, and he was completely immersed in himself, trying to figure out how this could have happened.